Morning, everyone. Welcome to the special meeting of the Board of Finance. This morning, it's a little bit after 11, but unusually we're getting started a little bit late. Normally the chair has it right on time. I don't think anybody will disagree with those arrangements. So we'll start this meeting. I'll call it to order, and then we'll have our roll call by Clerk Cutting.
Thank you. Good morning, commissioners.
Good morning.
Commissioner Bardwell,
Here.
Commissioner Cook.
Here.
You may proceed. Thank you.
I want to note that I was a good boy today. Sorry, my bad.
I'm over here.
Ian usually yells at me.
Okay, we're back. All right. Anything to add to the agenda?
I do have one thing to add that was brought forward by IT this morning.
All right. Come forward and
Right before this meeting, it was brought to my attention that there's an invoice that went unpaid. We do show a check was issued, but that the payment has not been received and that we will lose our network that we operate on at the county if it's not received by May 7th. Did you say?
Yes, we're in the grace period right now, but it's going to run out May 7th and then stop receiving any data across the network.
all right, so we'll put it under old business, not old business, under
Number 4.
new business, number 4. Thank you, Ashley. Anyone else? I'm just going to add a comment on the statutory finance meeting yesterday. We'll put it on number 5. I'll bring that up at the end. Correction. Okay. Anything else? Well, hearing or seeing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
No motions today.
No motion.
Oh, that's right. So we just go ahead, because so long we had a meeting of
You may proceed with public comment.
with
Thank you,
public
Commissioner.
comment. This is gonna be easier. Is there any public comments this morning? Any public comment, either from the room or from virtual? Hearing or seeing none, let the minutes show that we offered public comment. We didn't get any additional boardroom or from the virtual participants.
And I do believe that the agenda has public comment period right prior to adjournment.
Right prior to adjournment.
Yeah, so we'll have another public comment period as per laid out in the agenda.
And it is included on our agenda at the end. Standard public comments. Thank you for that
Thank you, Commissioner.
reminder. Then we'll move right into new business. The first item this morning, which we called the meeting for, one of the many items, is the accounts payable processing issues, claims processing policy review. And Ashley Bennett will be presenting.
I believe the policy is in the agenda, so I don't know if you want to review that first, or if you want me to present to you what I have that then makes me want to review that. Policy, I don't know how you want to go about doing this.
I'm just catching up. Is it, it's not in my paper agenda, but I'm trying to get it online. Is it online?
Yeah, it's online.
I just
I'm
thought when it
working
was.
towards being
Yeah.
online. Sort of reading on that.
Which really, that's just giving right currently how it's giving the scenario of what the process is with consideration to the checks being processed and mailed. But it's inconsistent because, as you can see, this was revised 6/15/06. And in that policy, it states that the treasurer's office takes the checks to the clerk's office, who stamps Jody Fedding's signature on it, and then comes back to the county treasurer to stamp our signature on it before mailing. When we went to BSNA financials, I believe that was in 2019, our signatures are automatically printed. And Jody and I do not have the verification of checks being printed. They're just automatically printed with our names. It has the department head approval from each department that's approving those invoices.
Very high level in a sense in terms of procedure policy, wouldn't you say? I mean, you're highlighting the fact that you and the clerk both have signature authority. Is there anything in this procedure that we could address later that you might point out should be updated?
I think that we need to have time to sit down and go through it with what the process is. Because we're not following that policy, but that's what's listed as we are following on the controller administrator page on our website. So I feel like this needs to be updated to reflect what we are actually doing.
And what aren't we following today that would contribute to the issue at hand? That may have contributed to.
Well, in this policy, it does not state that I saw. The concern that came about was the stopping payment on checks at the bank. And I don't even see in this policy laid out who is authorized to do that. My belief is it's only the county treasurer. I could be wrong in that. But I do not see how the person issuing the check for payment can also be the one that contacts the bank to stop the payment. That's why we have the controls of the accounts payable are not the ones sending out the checks. They have to go to a different department for controls. Which we have to provide those controls to our auditors. And the controls we provided to the auditors, I do not believe are what was followed.
For Commissioner Cook and I to understand fully, currently at the bank, who has authorization on record to cancel checks?
Shannon Nelson, my chief deputy treasurer, and myself.
Those are the only two. Yeah, it's been that way for how long?
Well, I had a previous chief deputy, so before it was just my other deputy and then myself ever since I've been treasurer. And before that, I believe it was the county treasurer and her deputy, which was Susan Jensen, until it became myself.
So it has not changed.
Not to my knowledge.
It was not changed. The control administrator or anyone else other than the two of you are listed. Was that perhaps the reason that when the checks were, when it was called to cancel the checks, that they were not? Or do you not know?
I don't know the reason. I've this morning received an email from the branch manager at North Star Bank giving me like a synopsis of all of the check issues. I sent him the list of checks from the 319 batch last night, and he reached out to eBanking to get as much information as he could provide to me. I do have some packets of information for you guys that I wasn't able to have prepared by the time that the notice had to go out and the agenda be prepared, to just kind of walk you through everything that happened, with the exception of in the packets that I created. I didn't know how many people were coming, so they don't all have one, but the notice from Joe, I just received it. So that's not in everybody's packet or all of the packets that are here, but I brought enough for the commissioners.
Chair, I have a question. Joe is the guy at the
Joe
bank.
Turner is the branch manager
Okay.
for the
I
bank.
just wanted that clarified.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's fine.
Thank
Do you want these packets so we can walk through this or?
Well, before we do that, is there any, any other aspect of the procedure that you'd like to highlight? Or do you think you've covered the provisions of it sufficiently? In other words, there's nothing more to add at this point?
I haven't had a lot of time to walk through the policy to verify what needs to be updated and changed. So I feel like it's something that we should approach together, including the controller administrator's office in that, so that we make sure that we're covering what our process actually is and update the policy accordingly.
Who do you propose the lead to be on that project?
Good question.
I
Our
think
controller.
The board would like the accountability to know who would be the lead.
I mean,
Also
ideally,
like
it
to
would be
know
your
the time.
controller, right? The controller oversees the finances of the county and reports to the board. We don't have a controller. So that would leave the finance committee or the full board, is my belief and understanding.
It's amazing how that swung back to the board, who has the least amount of understanding of the procedures related to all the county functions, who are basically high-level operations, who have the fiduciary responsibility to ensure that those who are performing these fiduciary procedures are doing that appropriately. I would, unless Commissioner Cook, you'd like to add to that, I would say the board would be the least of the choices to rewrite a policy. And in the absence of a controller, I would either suggest that the interim administrator, in conjunction with the chief accountant or administrative staff here, review that
Okay.
with your oversight and involvement to ensure that it complies with, well, at this point, with the procedures that have been in place for years that we're not following. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
And then from that standpoint, those three individuals will come back to the board with a plan, not only a plan, but also a timeline when this can be a deliverable to the board for approval. Would you agree?
Yes.
Commissioner Cook? And that would be ensured that the residents of the county are assured that we are abiding by the internal controls and that we're not engaging in issuing checks or doing things that would put liability upon the county and misuse the money that's been given to us for trust. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Would you add any more to it?
I would like to be involved in that process.
You are.
Okay.
You're gonna be the in other words, I said you'll be the oversight in terms of the assures that we comply.
Okay.
You are an elected individual as a treasurer. We rely on you to make sure as a signatory. And clerk Fetting as well, probably add in that as an oversight as well.
That would be greatly appreciated.
So you both could review that in terms of making sure that when you put your signature on a check, or whether it's a stamp, handwritten, which I don't think we do anymore unless it's exceptional, or automatic, that we know for a fact that that check is correct amount, that type of thing. Would you agree with that? Okay, clerk, do you have that down? So we have.
I do, thank you.
Is there anything else related to the policy and the review of the policy and the updating of the policy that we need to discuss at this point? I know you didn't have time to think about it, but here, I know you're in the throes. How about the chief accountant or the interim administrator, anything?
Again, I would need time to review the policy as well, and yes, I see that it was last revised in 2006. So this is not something that just happened overnight. So there are a lot of changes that will need to be made.
Thank you. Well, we'll center in on this particular policy first because all the county policies are updated. We've had that discussion in previous boards and it was never, I think Grimshaw had that lead on that. It was never accomplished reviewing of the policies of the county, but this is, from a financial standpoint, it would be the utmost importance that all of our financial policies will be reviewed on a schedule after this one is taken care of and that they're up to date and fully functional. And they're also audible by transactions or otherwise, and that they would pass the scrutiny of any auditor who may zero in on this. Would you agree? Okay. All right. Well, if there are no further additions to the review, and we have that, in fact, recorded, at least the strategy to overcome the situation that we are going to dive into here in a few minutes and update our procedure. Are there any other procedures that come to mind, Ashley, that should be looked at other than this one that would pertain to integrity of the county finances, or is it just, you know?
I had
Policies in
requested
general.
that the debit card policy be revised and updated. Previously, I don't know, this was a few months ago, I believe. Because there's concerns about that as well. That would be the only other financial one that I'm aware of.
I mean, in terms of the debit cards, is that an exposure policy, use policy? Limit?
Operational, I guess, of who's doing what. Yeah.
So that could be also added to next in line, perhaps, because we just did have a recent discussion on the debit cards. Okay. And once again, before we move on, is there anything else? I just want to get everything in writing so there's a plan for the board to review and move forward with the board agreement that we will address some of the inadequacies in our policy and make it much more clear and easier to follow, and certainly audible for anyone who would need to look at the policy to see what procedure would be used. All right. So you have some handouts.
Yeah.
We'll move on from the policy to the rest of your presentation.
I would need a full one at some point. But if you need it for yourself for a
I
little
have
while,
a mind copy.
okay. And then if you need one for each of them,
Well, it might be easier for them.
yeah, you can get me a full one. Thank you.
This one, they're just stapled. So I was trying to give you one.
Oh,
that's
okay.
stapled. Those
All right.
ones aren't stapled.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
You're welcome. And there's, I don't know if they want. Okay, so this first attachment that I have here, labeled attachment 1, is the list of checks that were received in our office to be sent out from March 19th. So I typed on the bottom just kind of a synopsis of what actually had happened. So for those in the audience, this is a list of the checks from 319 check run that Dara first notified our office the second week of April, Dara being the drain commissioner, that she received a phone call from Dutch Excavating inquiring as to where their check was. The treasurer's office received a written stop check order from the drain office on April 8th. An additional 2 stop check orders were issued on the 14th from the drain office. So if you look at attachment 2, these are the requests that we received from the drain office and how the process kind of shows you how the process works. So we received this notice from Stephanie, the first one, at which time we go into the bank. In the next page of attachment 2 will show you the confirmed stop payment with the bank. I attached all of the emails of her stop payment request from the drain office with the stop payment order confirmation from the bank. Okay. The week of the 14th was when we decided to review the camera footage because after we had received the first one from the drain office and didn't think anything of it, just somebody lost their check. But as more information was coming forward from the drain office, we decided something's going on with this check run because they're all from the same one. So we reviewed the camera footage. With the camera footage, it was determined that the treasurer's office, that the checks were processed under the normal procedure, that they were dropped in the mailbox outside of our building, and that the cameras then show the postal carrier picking up that mail. So my chief deputy, Shannon, then went to the post office to inquire about the checks and was instructed to wait the additional week because there were known issues at the sorting facility, which is in another state. The post office wanted us to wait until April 28th to stop payment on any of the checks issued on the list above. The information was shared with the front office. April 17th, checks were delivered to the treasurer's office on 4/16 batch. So if you look at attachment 3, these are a few of the checks that were delivered. There was a stack of checks. As you can see, the checks were illegible in multiple conversations with the front office. Shelley inquired if placing a label on the envelope would be sufficient, as it was going to take Debbie a lot of extra time to reprint these large stack of checks that were an issue. She then stated that Debbie had reprinted the checks from 3/19. Then Debbie attempted to stop payment on the remaining 15 checks because if you look at that attachment 1, I had highlighted the 4 checks that were stopped payment on from direction from the drain office. With the addition of the Verizon wireless one was a bill for the treasurer's office that Shannon had received a second notice on. So she stopped payment on that one for the treasurer's office. So there's 4 that were stopped payment officially with the bank. As stated in the meeting, Debbie spoke with 3 individuals from the bank and was under the impression that the checks were not going to clear the bank. But I had concerns about the internal controls. Dara had contacted me on Friday, April 18th, which was Good Friday, to let me know that Dutch Excavating had received their original check from 3/19. And so that gave me notice that those checks had surfaced. And it wasn't until earlier this week that I realized that the 3/19 checks that Debbie reported she had stopped payment on were in fact clearing the bank. So when the checks were delivered on Monday of this week and the staff was overwhelmed with the disorganization on how they were brought to our office, the checks were then brought to my attention. I don't usually process the checks. So if you look at attachment 4, these are the reports that were provided to us with the checks on Monday. As you can see, the first page, it says page 1 of 1. It's showing at the bottom left-hand corner that there are 63 checks. If you count the checks, there's actually only 62 because the one at the very top with the A is an ACH. So there's no physical check on that one. So you can notice at the bottom, we note there was 1 ACH and that 62 were mailed. In the bottom corner, you can see where Consumers Energy and DTE were mailed. And it says on 4/17/25, they were overnighted and certified. That's not from the treasurer's office. That note was not from us. So then if you go to the next page, this was with another stack of checks, but this is page 3 of 4. I do not know where page 1 and 2 are. I was provided 3 and 4. But if you look, it's saying that there's 108 on page 4 of 4. It's saying that there were 181 checks, 59 voided checks, but all we could mail were 57 because that's what was provided. 2 were inner office. That's what that I/O is. So we had no way of verifying that the checks that needed to go out did in fact go out, as the report provided with the checks did not match the numbers. This last page that I have, you'll see another page 1 of 1. And at the bottom, it says 10 checks to Ashley, 48 mailed, 1 void. Once again, note that there are ACHs up at the top that you would have to subtract off the total check count. But the concern with this is that this came to my office with the next page of a voided check that was printed upside down and was in the check stack for us to mail out. Voided checks do not get kept in the treasurer's office. Esty then took this down to the front office to inquire about it and was told that it was missed and that Debbie would be reissuing the check. So that's attachment 4. So when all of this disorganization showed up is how it got brought to my attention, because my staff, Esty, literally looked at me and said, I don't even want to touch this mess. Back to your attachment 1. The next page after that, this is the information that proves from North Star Bank from the 319 batch that Debbie stated she stopped payment on have in fact cleared the bank. This is the list of checks that have in fact cleared the bank that did not have to stop payment on. The next page is that, on the bottom I said, please note the check 200179 and then review the next attachment. So 200179 was for $3,632.92. That particular check was the original check from the 319 batch that Debbie stated she had stopped payment on. Debbie sent the check out certified mail overnight on April 17th, according to the attachment on attachment 4. The same day that original check 200179 cleared the bank. So if you look at that one where 200179 clears, it's on 4/17, which is the exact same day that Debbie overnighted a check, according to the attachment 4 at the bottom where it says she overnighted and certified mailed it on 4/17. So when I gave you everything I could compile to this, I've been going through all this stuff. The attachment 5, this shows stop payments for our entire bank account that goes back to May of 2023, it looks like. Obviously, there's been other stop payment requests that have come in. But you can see down on the first page of attachment 5, down towards the bottom, it starts with Dutch Excavating with check 200180, Willwood, Verizon Wireless, and Countryside. Those 4 right there were the 4 that the treasurer's office received notice for and requested to stop payment on. So as I started trying to figure out how do we weed through this mess, I then was looking into the voided checks, like what's going on. Attachment 6 is a list of the voided checks for the month of April. To try and cross-reference. Attachment 7. This is just showing information to give you an idea of what all takes place with trying to verify that correct information is going out. This was a conversation with the drain office, inquiring again about those checks and whether or not they'd been issued. So it starts with on April 7th, Stephanie from the drain office reaching out to Shannon in my office, just wanting to know if check 200178 has been cashed yet. Shannon then lets her know that it had not been cashed and that she had contacted the bank to confirm. The drain office then says that the contractor hadn't received it yet. And then, so that was all on April 7th. On April 8th, the drain office then reaches back out, Stephanie does, to Shannon to ask to cancel that check, gives us the amount, who it's payable to, and asks us to reissue it for the same amount. And then if we would let her know when it's ready to be picked up. And lets us know that the payee will bring his driver's license when he picks it up for proof that that is who that person that belongs to that check to. Shannon then lets her know that she requested a stop check at the bank and that she'll take the information to Debbie so it can get reissued. And that she'll ask to have a sticky note put on it so that way we hold the check for, it looks like Jeff Johnson to pick it up. That was on April 9th. On April 14th, the drain office then reaches out to us again and says she would like to know if a new check had been issued yet. And then on the 14th, Shannon responds that, yes, it's here and you can come pick it up. So this is just kind of showing you what the normal communication is within departments when there's an issue with a stop payment and how the treasurer's office doesn't just go stopping payment without direction from the board, the department heads, as they're the ones that are going to know whether or not these vendors are being paid. We don't have a way of necessarily knowing. Then there's a second email. So it kind of goes through each of the situations. The second email there is also from the drain office. But this is an email chain that's going on with Shannon, Dara, Alicia. At the very end of this, which is very similar to the last one, there is communication from Debbie when Shannon reaches back out to the drain office to let them know that if they need an update to reach out to Debbie. Debbie then states that, as you're aware, the checks dated 3/19 were lost in the mail for this reason. And then it says, I discussed this issue with the bank. They were stopped payment on all checks. I voided invoices and checks in BSNA and reissued them. With that being said, here's updated payment information for the vendors in question, where she documents the Will Wood, the Dutch Excavating checks issued on 4/18. She then lets Shannon know that if Angie hasn't brought us the checks yet that morning, that they would be there shortly. And then the drain office was waiting for that check and hadn't received it yet as of 12:48. Alicia reaches back out to the treasurer's office to let us know that she was heading into meetings for the afternoon, but they needed that check and if we could email them as soon as we received the checks. This was during lunch, obviously. At 12:51, Shannon responds and just says that she'll let her know. And then at 1:58, there's notice sent to Alicia that we finally received the checks from the morning that Debbie said we should be receiving them. And that the email was confirmed to Alicia at the drain office to then come let them know that the check had arrived finally. So all of this brings me to my concerns of how everything started. I feel like when you look at attachment 3, it's very unprofessional to be sending out checks that look like that. The discussion between the front office and myself, when I pushed back and said I was not sending those out, were 3 different conversations before I finally contacted IT and asked them to look at their printer because there were issues. These checks going out this way, first of all, I feel the mail already has a problem getting mail to us on time. But now you look at who that pay to the order of is written out to in a windowed envelope. I don't know that that very first one would ever make it to Vassar schools. And they were all like this. So it leaves increased and unnecessary phone calls with my office as departments are reaching out to me, wanting to know why payments haven't been received. And then on top of that, people that are receiving these checks are calling and asking what's going on because they are getting pushed back at their bank. Here at the county, we use a scanner when we scan checks that from people that have paid. And the scanners they struggle with checks that are not even this bad. And it causes a lot of additional backside work for the bank employees and for mine, because you have to go in and manually enter what that amount is. And I don't know if you can read what that amount is. The written portion of that amount, where it says pay exactly, you can kind of make that out. But the amount in the little box that you would normally write the numbers in, that is illegible. My other concern is that because I did have 3 different conversations with the front office about these checks going out the way they are, that I'm concerned that they don't fully comprehend the significance of how bad this looks and the potential liability that it's caused for the reprinting of these checks without properly stopping payment at the bank. We have increased number of hours that the treasurer's office employees are spending now monitoring the AP check runs to ensure that they're accurate and safe to send out when we receive these checks from the front office. Another concern is that the invoices that were sent, I personally sent invoices to Debbie on 4/7 that were still not processed as the close of business on 4/21. When I asked about it, she had a stack of papers and told me that she hadn't gotten to it yet. However, some invoices that I sent to her after the 4/7 invoices I sent were processed. So my concern is that the new ones on the top of the stack are getting processed and the bottom ones are falling further behind. My other issues are that the attention to detail, we have other offices that have reached out to me, other department heads, other electeds, that are now doing additional work to track their invoices and ensure that payments are being received by the vendors. My other concern is that the bank reconciliation process, I pride myself in being able to reconcile the county's bank statements every month to the penny. Multiple auditors have been surprised that we have that ability here, as many counties just write off amounts in the month as miscellaneous and call it a day. The issues that I highlighted above in all of these attachments are going to hinder me from being able to do so for the month of April, which I statutorily have to have done by the 20th of May. This task is usually completed within the 10th day of each month. And where this is going to come from is that Debbie has checks that are voided in BS&A system that have cleared the bank and withdrawn from our account. But our checkbook, if you will, says that the check doesn't exist. So this is not only a personnel issue, but it's a financial one. It's affecting our county finances. And as the individuals representing the county and the control of the county finances, a decision needs to be made on how we can effectively move forward with the confidence that the invoices will be paid correctly and on time. So that's what I had prepared for you. And then this morning, Tracy presented to me that if payment isn't received from an invoice that was paid, the check went out, but I'm questioning if it went out looking like these checks here, it probably won't be received. I don't know, but we're going to lose our network.
Did get extension of their grace period, so we're okay for right now.
Till when?
Till, I think it's August.
So a substantial
Yes.
grace period.
Ian has his hand raised.
Ian?
Hi, I'd like to clarify that we aren't going to lose our network. We'll still have functionality, everything will be working, just new customizations, new changes will not be allowed to be processed. So we'll still be able to do business as normal, but any changes, we're not going to automatically just get shut up.
That's good news.
And Ian, the August extension was due to what? That seems like an extreme amount of time. Is that to wait for the check to come in, or what was the arrangement?
That's the policy of the vendor, of the organization that gives us, they have a grace period for issues such as this. We'll be able to have the time to correct problems.
Okay, thank you for that explanation.
So I guess my frustration how do I move forward? I don't feel confident sending out checks at this point. As I showed you with those reports, I can't even verify that the checks are in fact the amount of checks that need to be going out, as the report was showing 181 and we had 57. I don't have an answer. I was hoping you did.
Commissioner Cook? Any questions, comments?
I don't have any questions, but we gotta fix this. We gotta get all the parties together to get this thing fixed. And we're not gonna do it in a public meeting. I mean,
So I would like to state that Jody and I had offered to help at a meeting, and we were told that we were too busy to assist. But I'm just wondering, how much time do you think I have invested in this? Because I'm too busy to help, but now I'm here to help clean it up. You don't want me at the beginning to make sure it's being ran smoothly. You want me at the end to clean it up.
Which was well said. We don't have a full board here, but it's obvious that when Renee left, was there not a transition of job responsibilities and training, or was there not?
Debbie's actually been the AP backup for over 6 years without any issue, doing them multiple times throughout the year. Renee was doing AP right up till the day she left, which was March 28th.
So
So there was a transition, yes.
what's changed then? Just the people?
I'm not clear. I've heard from multiple department heads on a variety of issues that were happening previous to Renee leaving. So this is all new to me and was not really discussed with me previous to these open meetings. Ashley and I spoke briefly, but it was never brought to my attention. I'm not sure what's changed. There's a lot of people here who might have some thoughts as well. But I've been contacted by several department heads regarding invoices that were put in long ago. I mean, that weren't paid long before it was Debbie's responsibility.
Let me ask a broad question. Do you believe at this point we have a competency in the administration that would be trustworthy of the residents of this county once they understand this particular situation. And my concern is if it's not remedied promptly, that it could manifest itself into a bigger issue. What's your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are that we sat down together as a team once this actually all came to us, all the information instead of bits and pieces that did come to me at 3:30 Thursday before Good Friday. We do have a very good potential plan in place. And I know that that would be board approval, but we sat down and discussed how we could make things better, more efficient, and overall include competency and restore confidence in the office. Some of the stuff that, looking back at how it's always been done, we do have a proposed how we'd like to see it done going forward, which I think would bring a lot of confidence back all the way around. I think a lot of this was lack of communication. I'm not clear on a lot of this. I know Ashley did come into my office regarding the lost mail run. Actually, Commissioner Vaughn was there. I was never informed that they were told to give it a week. Not that that matters, but I was brought up to speed on when it was lost. I didn't hear the update on it. Just maybe some better communication, I think, too, as well as what we work together as a department to put together and propose at the next
I
board meeting.
think you talking about the communication part, but your staff reached out to the bank without communicating to me that that was going to happen either.
I agree with that. And I do agree with that. She should not have done that. I believe that that was a misunderstanding. I know I heard you say void checks. I couldn't say what you said to void. I did hear that comment.
The voided checks were the ones that were.
Right. I'm not clear because you talked to Debbie,
Yes,
so
we
I'm
had the
not clear.
checks
Yeah.
Still in our possession.
So let me just back up on the communication since we brought up. On contacting the bank, did you approve that or were you approached with that question?
No, I didn't even know about it. It was never brought to my attention by anyone.
And so it was an independent action.
I guess that would have to be answered by someone other than me, but yes, I mean,
So it wasn't
I did
you.
hear void checks. So in my mind, what would be the next logical step?
Well, I can't have a conjecture on that. I'm just trying to establish that you were not contacted. It was an independent action outside, and you are functioning as interim administrator, which begs the question, hopefully, there's communication within in the administrative offices that decisions like this, of this magnitude, you can see what it's come to.
And I would also
would
hope,
be addressed with you as a point person.
right, and I would hope going forward, we can work on this internally, and it should have come to me, whether I'm the controller or not. I was not informed of this.
Yeah, I understand that now. I'm just looking at, from this day forward, I would think you want a staff meeting and outline the areas that you especially want to be involved in versus independent decision making. So I'll let that set aside. Were the three individuals that were contacting the bank were the names ever given who they were? I've seen
I
that written
reached
there.
out to Joe Turner at the bank and verified if Debbie did contact 3 individuals at the bank. But he did not have any knowledge of it, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. That just means conversations don't get shared. He couldn't give me a name because I was wanting to know, who did Debbie speak to? Because my concern is that, for example, I can't contact the bank and stop a payment on your checks for your personal account, which is what essentially was happening here. The names on the account, Debbie is not one of them. So I was trying to ensure that that truly cannot happen if it was attempted going forward.
As a county treasurer and at the highest level, working backwards, the detail you have provided is more than sufficient to explain where we're at today in terms of double issuing and exposure and the complications and the overtime, resultant chain of events throughout the organization, especially all the electeds and all those who are involved getting calls, which was very aptly put. They would be the brunt of the first line that would get the call. They would hold money. In your mind, do you have a strategy? And I know you've already outlined one possibility, and that was brought up to the board earlier this year related to yourself and the clerk overseeing finances. To a degree, I'm not sure what degree, but I know it's been talked about in past boards. But setting that aside, what will it take in 4 or 5 steps to not to fix the procedure at this moment, because that's a separate issue, but to minimize the county exposure financially based on what you presented? What do you think needs to be done?
I mean, based on what I've seen right here and how nervous it makes me moving forward, I still hold to the fact that my name and Jody's name are on those checks and that we should be in that process. I believe that accounts payable functions can be performed in the clerk's office. This is showing me that we clearly cannot keep going the route we are going currently. Especially because the snowball effect of how many people have reached out with issues of things going unpaid, which I'm not putting this all on Debbie, because as Shelley stated, these are invoices that were received months ago. So this has been going on for months ago, right? And we had somebody in that office that was, I believe, very experienced doing accounts payable. And I don't know, I don't work in that office, but she's had a lot of years of experience. And losing that was a lot of history and experience. And now we're trying to move forward with inexperience, zero direction. We haven't even tried to fill the controller position. We haven't had any interviews that I'm aware of. Where are we heading? What's the financial future of Tuscola County? Because what I'm seeing, it's not good. And if my name's going to be on this check, I would like to see a change made.
That's an interesting strategy to the question we asked, but I'll accept the overall. It's a very high level assessment of the competence of your confidence as an elected treasurer, which doesn't represent the confidence of other elected.
Do I have confidence in other electeds?
No. Does what you just said reflect the confidence of the county in terms of the other elected? You're very concerned about the direction of the county. Did the other elected?
I think it would be an interesting meeting if we let all these people stand up and speak.
As do I.
So, all right. The nature of a board of commissioners, although they have fiduciary responsibility and only fiduciary responsibility, not operational, which many commissioners have tried to attempt that. You know, it's seen, I especially have seen it. The problem is we're only as good as the information that we receive. And we're only as good as the information we receive in terms of how it's delivered, in terms of how it's explained, in terms of how relevancy of particular areas which are priority, of concern of experienced people who understand finance and projection and performance. We don't have that. And established earlier, we haven't got a financial report for the first quarter yet. So we don't know what we're at. All right, I'll agree with you with that. That would be very concerning. It should be concerning to all board members.
Right.
But the board it's difficult as it is to not only understand, but to comprehend. I mean, if they don't look at the board in terms of the background of finance, there's very few of the board members who are from a finance background or familiar or been in control. But as you said earlier, this has been a mitigated issue prior to a change of personnel. It was occurring, but not to the magnitude that we see it today, correct? Something.
Yeah.
And within a matter of weeks, I don't know, the board had no knowledge of any of this that I'm aware of
Me either.
until yesterday. And in terms of it moving, even at finance chairs, I mean, we share that position. We are just as new at this in terms of the problem, but not setting aside excellent background you presented in terms of how it happened. It's very extensive. It's almost overwhelming in terms of it continues at a rapid rate. And I'm not sure where that's going, but you make a good point there in a sense that the board will have to decide the relevancy and the importance of this issue, because I suspect that this is not the only thing that's going on. I don't know. This just came to us, and we're going, as we have said before as a board, we're concerned about our financial future because our previous control administrator has laid that out so succinctly and been discussed and talked about, and yet we don't know who's driving the bus and what we have to work with. There's my, maybe perhaps shared by the board, financial concern of moving forward. Now, circling back, we have to fix this once and for all. Apparently it's not been fixed for years, and it's just somehow got through. I can't imagine in my mind, from my accounting background, finance, and you get a stack of bills while you pull them up, first in, first out versus last in, first out. I don't understand that. That's the first tenet that you learn in accounting 101. Maybe it's 102. But yet, I'm hearing evidence of that. We're hearing evidence of that is very concerning in terms of who else isn't getting paid within a reasonable amount of time, and how much expediting have we been going through in costs have we occurred as a result of that. We haven't got that captured. And how much overtime has been generated because of that procedure, one which we'd be audited on. Apparently we weren't audited on because we're not following it, or if we said we're doing it, they didn't check it, right? Something. Because I know when they do audits, they don't do everything. So looking forward, that's the question that Commissioner Cook and I could address the board with, in terms of we need a plan. And being not operational, we need that plan from those who are involved in it to show us the competency that we have or not to move forward, to gain the credibility, especially the financial credibility related to handling the county finances, especially payroll, which seems to be.
It's my understanding that
Shouldn't be
people
too
went
difficult.
unpaid on payday and that another payroll had to be ran.
People didn't get paid.
Correct.
Commissioner Cook, were you aware of it?
No.
Has that been going on too?
Yes.
Payroll?
Could I weigh in on that, please?
Please do.
So BSNA, there's a safety in it, and there has been instances where after the check proofing report is run, the person comes off the payroll. It has happened rarely. We always issue payment immediately following. That's been going on since I've been here. People going unpaid is not an accurate statement. They may not have received it as they were expecting, but no one's ever gone unpaid.
Correct. It was remedied, I think, the next
And
day
it
when they
happens.
didn't get it.
We
in
do our best to catch that, but it happens. We are all only human. People have never not been paid in this county when a check was due.
just sharing the information. I get contacted from a lot of departments inquiring about items or sharing their frustrations on controls I don't have control over.
Well, I appreciate that. I
So
mean,
you
appreciate
asked
the
and I
explanation, but
responded.
has this been going on as well? I mean, from you getting contacted, has this been going on like prior to the transition as well? Is it just normal in the course of business, or do you see it as something that could be hopefully not growing?
I was just made aware about let me back up. There have been other payroll check runs where there's multiple check runs done, like an initial with somebody's had to get voided, and then they had to reissue that one. So we've had other situations where on the day that we are processing the payroll, meaning we're sending the file to the bank, the treasurer's office, there's been 2 check runs on that date. But as for receiving it after the fact, I am not aware of it happening before now. I'm only aware of it now.
Okay.
It
So,
might just be a way in how you're receiving the file. And quite frequently, unfortunately, it is the sheriff's department with the Kronos issue, and Shannon will catch it and say, so-and-so should have been paid this amount, my apologies. And
This one
that's-
was the courts that reached out to me.
Yes, I'm aware of that one,
Recent
yeah.
was the courts. It wasn't the sheriff's.
it's comforting to know that we're not gonna have a 7-page report on it.
No.
Chairman Bardwell,
Yes.
can I,
Please do.
as far as the financial, reports that we haven't gotten, I think we need to also remember, number one, our audit just got done. And number 2,
It's not done.
not done.
It's not done.
So we don't even have audited numbers. And also Erica's only been on the job for 6 weeks. And I know, I'm not saying that you were pointing blame on that, but that's the frustration. And I feel his frustration on not having those figures, but there's also a reason for them. At least that's my opinion.
Well, I appreciate that, Commissioner Clark. I sort of feel the opposite in the sense that when you hire someone, they should have the ability, and it should be a priority, the 4 quarters of financials. I'm not so sure how germane the end of the audit is for a financial. Obviously, we would take that into consideration if we knew, but in the wake of a deficit this year projected about 152,000, 2.2 million the following year and upwards beyond that. It is so imperative to be looking at not the financial, be looking at the most vulnerable areas, the overspent areas, the revenue. We need to know what the revenue position is. Because as we look at the last budget, we don't know until the end of the year when the adjustments are made where we're at any particular time. And Neil was attempting to do a full accrual. He was attempting to get us there at that time. We used modified, and that's the problem. At the end of the year, we make all these adjustments. And just as we did last year, if you look at the financials, there's $1 million plus that we moved around. Yes.
Well, if I may, so Neil did a lot of things, that may or may not be accurate in my opinion. So some of his actions are still needing to be audited. So like at QVAC, she helped out to get the balanced budget. She fixed what she could. We had Clint Moran who had some oversight on some of these items. But in order to give you accurate numbers, it takes time to vet these things out.
I'm going to be in disagreement with this, but this meeting isn't for that. It can be another meeting. I wouldn't challenge Neil since he's a CPA at all, and I wouldn't challenge the inappropriateness of what he did, even though it was not fully understood and his time here was very short. But I don't want to diss someone who's not here to defend themselves in a sense when on the other side, we were to hire people who were competent to take us forward. In my standards of hiring, which I wasn't involved in, you always get someone that knows more than which person's leaving. That's the standard, if it's achievable or not. So regardless, we can make all the excuses of time. But at some point, this board, as I said earlier, needs to understand the financial position of the county, as well as all the elected, as well as the rest of the employees, because they all understand what previous control administrator projected. Very discerning, concerning.
Well,
So-
with all due respect, I do disagree. However,
I'm sure you will.
I am the chief accountant, not the controller, first of all. And second of all, I didn't hire him. I wasn't here.
All right, we can
So
stop you right there.
don't
I don't
know-
need to know the rest of the story.
I
I
don't-
must stay on task here. And we will have you come to us with a And you perhaps look at the past financial reporting so that the board will understand, that's the objective, exactly where we're at. Now, if you want to wait till the audit is done, I'm sure the board will comply with that or acknowledge that. But at some point, you're going to have to come forward with the board. All right, with that said, Commissioner Cook, I'm sorry, we're
No,
getting a little, from a financial standpoint, it's been a lot of years. I haven't seen anything like this in the past. All right, so where we're at now in this particular situation, before we move on, is that we're going to have the administration put the plan together. There's going to be someone who reviews the procedure. We're going to have the administration work with the clerk, the oversight of the clerk and the treasurer, correct? To bring a plan to the board.
I think it would actually be more so, well, because in the event that you didn't have a controller administrator, the functions that we're referring to of the accounts payable process would statutorily fall into the clerk's office. I think the clerk would have to have a heavy hand in this process of figuring out what we're doing moving forward. I'm the end person. That's just sending the check out, simply.
Well, I was hoping with the heavy hand that it would be worked in conjunction
Okay.
to guide the county out of this, to prevent more exposure and to put a remedy in place. I mean, going forward, yes. Would you agree with that? Going forward. But I would think unless the clerk disagrees about the heavy hand and being the sole.
I didn't talk to Jody, so I don't know. Sorry, Jody.
So I would just, for the board's assurance, we're looking for a remedy to come back to show us that we shouldn't be concerned going forward, and that whatever these going on with these checks that are outstanding and supposed to be canceled, double runs, that and you know, reclaiming the funds. I mean, you have to go through the, what do you have to invoice them again for the, if they cash the check the second time? I don't know. You would know that. Somebody has to do that. Correct? Or you won't get it. If someone was paid $11,000 first time and they were issued another check for 11 and they cashed both checks, I mean, it's not, what was there?
I
100 and some
think-
thousand forgeries?
I think because given the customer that did cash both checks, I believe it was either DTE or consumers. My apologies. It's listed
DTE.
on there. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I believe that it would just be like a credit on our account and we would be able to use that for our next bill. So luckily that is how that played out.
DT is a good example because that is, some of the other names I don't recognize, but DTE, I think they're the public.
So I don't know that an invoice.
Thankfully, the treasurer was able to pull some of the checks that were duplicated, because some of those checks that were reissued, we could say, were to be mailed out to defendants for restitution victims, and you would not see that money back. And so fortunately, Treasurer Bennett was able to pull those checks, and she sent me a list of the concerned ones. And then with my chief deputy and myself, we were able to verify that we should not be remailing those checks out, because at that point, once a defendant cashes a check,
So if I could ask a question, yesterday in the meeting, Ashley, you said there was $179,000 in checks that duplicated and cleared the bank. Could I get a list of those checks, please?
From accounts payable, I don't have the
Because
authorization.
we've only
I
found
believe,
4.
I'm sorry?
We've only found 4 that was double cash that I'm
We found-
aware of.
I didn't state that the checks cashed. I said if I would have sent those checks out and I had the bundle of checks with me, that's what the effect would have been. But I pulled those checks, and that only 2 were actually sent out that I couldn't control, that were overnighted and certified mail.
My apologies. When I re-listened to the meeting, I must have misunderstood. we do have, again, I feel that communication could have really went a long way, and I am truly sorry that it came to this. We do have a plan that we would like to provide to the treasurer, the clerk, the board of commissioners, that we would like to implement. As far as invoicing, just because we've always done it that way doesn't make it the best way. Don't have it prepared today, nor would this be the time or place to do it. But we do feel that we can make it much better, and we do feel that we can restore confidence. Just unfortunately, it came to this in a public meeting instead of coming to me.
I think, Shelley, one of the best things, a rule of thumb is a tenet for all organizations, especially leadership or those who have responsibility for things that far span the boundaries of what they actually are involved in, is that no surprises.
Mhm.
In this, when I hear that, yeah, that's not really the way we do it, or we have a better way, this is not the time to bring up a better way after we've seen. The time is fix what we've got, make it work, communicate with the clerk and the treasurer, so once you come to the board, you're in unison, and with the procedure change, that the board doesn't have to be concerned about going forward with this aspect. So going forward, when you know these things, and I suspect our policies are pretty eroded by now in certain areas, don't surprise the board.
I completely agree. And unfortunately, I just learned of it last Thursday.
I mean, not you particularly, but anyone listening, that is,
I didn't learn of it until Monday. So
No, I mean,
you
the
want to
whole-
go after me about communication. You said you learned about it Thursday. I learned about it Monday.
No, when I talked to you, when we talked on Thursday.
Well,
That
Commissioner
was
Cook
not,
and I
I
learned
didn't know
about it
that
yesterday.
duplicate checks had gone out on Thursday.
No, I'm just saying I didn't learn about
Oh,
previous invoicing issues, invoices being lost. That all just came to me in the last 24 hours. I didn't know about that previously. I never knew there was an issue, but as far as learning about this portion of it, I learned of it last
Well,
Thursday.
here's another tenet. A 3-person, 4-person office, and I'm sure this is not reflecting here, but this has gone on for a while. This didn't occur in the last 3 days, did it?
It
What's the
doesn't
time
look
period?
that way.
All right.
As I said, I don't process the checks. I'm busy doing other things in the office. These checks, typically it's Esty. Also for the auditing controls, we have somebody else without their name on the check processing the checks. The reason that I found that there was an issue with these checks being printed is that these checks were to be turned over to me so I could put them with the supporting documentation to mail out to, as you can see, the Vassar School Treasurer for the delinquent tax, real property taxes mailing. So it was right in my face. That's where the reprint issue came from. And then it just snowballed into everything else being found when it was mentioned that Debbie had reprinted those checks that were never stop payment. Then it all kind of started piecing together. But originally the issue was just that I was wanting these checks reprinted and was told no until our third conversation when they were reprinted.
What I was going to go toward Commissioner Cook, and maybe you want to reflect on this comment as well. I think at the utmost level, there's a lack of communication between the offices and the functionality. And I know that everybody's that bases need to be touched not only internally in that office, but also externally to those who are associated, especially with the signature approvals, who are ultimately responsible for what they sign. So would you not agree? We'd like to see heightened communication, not only within the office, but within the clerk and the treasurer. And I know there's been a chasm, as I understand, with ideals and ideas and perhaps, but this is the time to set those aside and create a remedy that's workable.
I agree with you 100%. And not only communication, but I think the thing that frustrates me and Commissioner Bartle as well, and probably any of the other board members that are listening or are here, is if this has been going on, not to maybe this extent, that's the frustrating part for me personally. to get this through. And I'm glad that it came about so we can fix it, but if anything like this has been happening, it's frustrating for me. But I think it can be remedied if we all get together and, you know, be able to bring to us a board to wait, first of all, to remedy this, but like Commissioner Bardwell said, get the confidence back in us as a board, the taxpayers and the employees, everybody.
It's hard to fix something that you didn't know was broken until just recently.
I do think that there have been other communications through email or to say like, okay, this issue maybe, but there are other notifications that have been received with concerning issues in regards to financial items through email communication or whatever that may be. So to act like this just was an issue, this issue just came out, yes. But there have been multiple issues laid out and communicated. I think that's fair to say.
Commissioner Bardwell, can I make one more statement?
Oh, yeah.
Let's forget about the past. It happened. We know, we're glad we caught it, but let's go on from here. How we gotta fix it? We can be here all day bringing up the past, and that doesn't do anybody any good.
Yeah, the past always predicts the future. If you always do the same things, you've always done it that way, and you know it's wrong, whatever, you get what you, as Matt, before you get what you got. So I certainly agree with you on that. A lot of breadth and depth to this. Have we covered this sufficiently in your mind?
I mean, I feel like you
Areas of
have the
exposure.
issue. I don't know the solution. So that's the direction, I guess, that I need to know what we're doing. When I stated that I wasn't going to send out any more checks until I had further direction. I also never received those checks in my office. I believe there's been checks ran because you guys approved checks yesterday's meeting for finance, correct? So there should have been checks processed.
Can I answer on that, please?
Yeah.
I didn't give them to you because you said you weren't sending out checks, but I have them here right now if you would like them.
Sure. So they should be in our safe.
I had them locked up in a locked cabinet.
So that could have been done outside this meeting. I mean, I'm not sure the relevancy.
Just because she said she didn't have them.
I know, but in a sense, could you not just walk down the hallway?
Very well could have.
I mean, it's a communication issue. The door's
Yes,
open.
I agree. I totally agree with
All
you.
right.
There is a communication issue. I totally agree with that.
This seems to exacerbate what's going on. Well, actually, the solution is going to come from the administration and from the clerk and from the treasurer to the board. I don't see any other way. The board's not going to create the solution.
No.
And you probably wouldn't want us to create the
No.
solution. But maybe the other board members would agree they'd like to create it. I'm not sure. But is that sufficient to move forward, or we have to have some buy-in here? Or if you got a different methodology.
I guess I'm at the point where I feel like I've maybe expressed my concern of how there's the lack of my ability to verify that these checks are in fact good to send out. I literally get like I said, the reports on top and the checks come things like this. Clearing my name that in the event that I would have sent those checks out, because they were folded, put in envelopes, postmarked from the mail machine and ready to be dropped when I was like, oh no, and went and opened them to verify and snag them out. So as long as Jody and I are not liable for these checks, if that were to ever happen again, then I'll mail it out. That's on the board.
That's a good analogy in the sense that I use that as the last, oversight. But when you're looking at the multitude of checks and they're being presented them, it's just like the Board of Commissioners asking to develop a plan to fix something. we don't have the breadth of depth. We don't see it that often. And we have to rely on the elected, the appointed, and everyone else to do the due diligence so that you two don't have to worry. That's a good question that needs to be resolved. What would it look, I mean, perhaps this is not a problem-solving meeting, but just out of curiosity, what would it look like, a word picture or whatever, that you would need to accomplish what you just discussed? What would you need for the verification? How would you feel comfortable with that, both of you? How would you feel comfortable when you sign that check? What would you need in front of you that you're not getting today? Or is there a different methodology?
Or what?
A different methodology?
That's my problem, I guess, is that so accounts payable receives an invoice from a department indicating what line they should pay it from. It is scanned as an attachment even as backup for the process that accounts payable is doing. And a check, it's added to a check run and printed. When I receive the check, there's no invoice in there. Sometimes there are some, we send like our little payment remittance with it. But if a check has then been voided and reissued, there isn't, just as the first step, there isn't a way for, it's not like I'm verifying invoices against these checks. It's not being provided in here. And I'm not saying it should be. That's a different step of the process. So I don't know that there's necessarily anything that can be provided to me showing that I in fact should have confidence to mail these out. I don't know of something that I don't know. I don't do the accounts payable process, so I don't know.
Commissioner Cook, I have a suggestion.
I do.
No, I do,
Oh, you do?
but I'm looking to you for, the poke the holes in it if you like. The answer to that question is those who supply those checks, they're the ones who verify the accuracy, appropriateness, presentation. They're the ones who are responsible. You don't have that responsibility. And you need assurances from the administration, payables or others, that when you get those checks, both of these, that those internal controls, whether existing or non-existing, they're certainly not in these procedures, are expanded to assure that. Otherwise, both of you are one person who has to have just like we do. We don't have that breadth and depth that we can assure that. We can only rely on the ones given to you. So refuting what I've been saying all along, you're responsible. It goes back, and this is really saying it, but I'm saying it goes back to those who create the transactions and who have the authority to make sure that what you get is accurate and appropriate. That's what the board needs to see. That's what the administration has to work on. And payables, if it's not existent, I don't know. It's got to be fixed. So that assurance is where you both can have the assurance as signers. Otherwise, I'd be the first one to say, why do you sign these checks? You have to, but you just don't know. And that's what you've been saying all morning, basically. So it has to come that the board, Commissioner Cook, you
No,
brought in any time.
no, I agree with
We
you
have the
100%.
assurances.
And that assurance and confidence, I trust will be there once you guys get together and come up with a procedure that you're all in agreement with. I would hope.
Otherwise, there has to be the board, the administration, the board. It's not operation. Administration has to decide if those are the right individuals. All right. I'm saying that very up front. But when you have a process, you need to follow the process. If you don't have one, you need to create one. Would you agree with that? looking at you, Ashley, and your mind is going in 1,000 different directions.
Mm-hmm.
You got something else to say.
I just, I don't know. Like, I don't feel comfortable sending these out, but if you're telling me that we're good until a new process is formed, okay, I'll send them out.
Well, this is where we're circling around and around and around. What is it that you would have, that you would need to feel comfortable with this group of checks?
Given what we just experienced and how I've spent my last week, because it started Thursday when Shelley told me that she printed checks again, started thinking about it, but didn't think, okay. And then I realized Earth said that she stopped payment. I'm like, okay, she stopped payment, like everything's fine. So I've been thinking on this for the past week. I was up, last night, sleepless nights, trying to figure out what is the solution. But as the treasurer, how am I going to have the solution for accounts payable? It's not my lane, right?
No, but you have you can have help with the oversight, which we mentioned earlier, because the heavy hand on the left over here. And I'm thinking that whatever has to be done immediately to give you some assurance through the administration, through the payables, through Deb and others, so that they feel those checks are correct and appropriate.
So just, for me, my assurance is the way this whole thing started, right? That was the attachment 3 that I showed you, was I was directed by the front office to send out those checks. And it was multiple conversations before they finally agreed to reprint them. It wasn't like I went down there and asked for them to reprint these and was told, oh my goodness, we missed that. Yeah, sure, we'll reprint those. No, I was told to send them out and that the bank will cash them. So you want me to have assurance in something
well
as simple
said.
as that.
Well said, but that's where you have to step in regardless and say, no, that's not sufficient. I mean, you look at the printer issue, that any reasonable, ordinary person will look at that and when someone, on a check.
But that went through the AP process of being printed and somebody reviewing them in the front office before it came to my office.
That was. a
So now
big
you have
mistake.
2 people that are saying that's acceptable. And
What
you
you're
want me to
saying-
have assurance that we're good to just keep going forward.
There's no assurances that they can provide at this present time that will give you the confidence that you're looking for as a signatory.
No.
And I'm really reluctant, and the chairman's in the back of the room, I just saw him, I didn't know he was here. Been hiding behind you somewhere. Oh, okay, I'll get to it just a minute. I wanted to, I don't think it's the responsibility of this board to give you the authority to send the checks. I mean, Commissioner,
No.
it's not our role. That's why we have you elected. That's why we have the clerk and the whole administration. They have to provide the assurances collectively that those checks go out. And you have to have the assurance that they're not duplicated, they're not, all the questions that you raised earlier. That's a part of the operations.
May I, add a
Yes.
an option? If, the treasurer would prefer a third set of eyes, I understand that if you would like the account to look at specifically the current ones that you're holding and do a deeper dive, I'm willing to do that, if that would help reassure for this batch of checks to get them out while we work on the new procedure. I understand that that might not be the procedure going forward, but if there is a lack of confidence for the ones you have at hand right now,
These ones?
or whatever you're holding that you have concerns with, if you would like myself, because I'm not typically involved in the AP process yet. I am gonna be back up, right? I just haven't been trained on that yet. But if you need me to look at them and say, look up the invoices and see, is this a duplicate payment or not? I'm willing to do that if that would help the situation.
Wouldn't it be an option as well, to allow Ashley access to the BSNA accounts payable side? And as she is processing them, they could look those invoices up herself to be able to cross-reference that and check it that way.
I believe that would be fine, but is that statutory? I mean, is there a problem with that? That I'm not aware of or any statute that I'm
No,
aware
not
of?
that I'm aware of. I see Ian does have his hand up at that, so I'm not sure if he knows something. Ian, yes.
Oh,
I thought I seen it. Now it's gone.
Yeah, is it okay if I address the board?
Yes, Ian.
Okay.
Yes.
I didn't know if I was recognized or not, but
I didn't realize it was you.
there's a way that we can provide a view only to the invoices and their images. I don't know. And we do need to err on the caution of discussing the actual process of how these things are happening, and the social engineering of the way that people are hacking right now, divulging more information of how we actually process these invoices. They go to whose hands this time, this way. I think we need to err on the caution of some of those details before we talk about them publicly. Maybe it could be in a closed session or something, but and I don't want that to take away from the transparency of this meeting. I think it's great that our clerk saw something, said something, the treasurer saw something, said something. I appreciate that the transparency of them and this board of discussing this issue is also something very important. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Ian.
Oh.
Chairman. Yes. Run it. You're up next.
Well, we're here this morning. We got to take care of the invoice problem. When the invoices come in, they've got to be paid. That's pretty simple. You know, we can't file them away, and it's been going on for quite a while. But the other reason why we're here, 3 things that happened that put us here today, and that's shaken Ashley's confidence and it's caused communication, caused rift between everybody. We thought the mail was lost. Part of the mail people, they didn't know where the mail was at. They thought the mail was lost. Okay. Meanwhile, and that's the next step was Treasurer's office advised Debbie, mail was lost, void the checks. Debbie made a mistake that, hey, to void the checks, I got to cancel them too. Okay. She wasn't staffed supposed to do it, but that's what she took it. Them all things. Ashley gets.
Lost in the mail and you.
There were 4 checks that you
Okay.
asked to.
We're not gonna, but I'm just saying, these are the processes. The chances of
We'll have
this,
a rebuttal here tomorrow.
yeah, we're not gonna go back for, okay. So then we took and said, okay, if I'm voiding checks, I gotta cancel checks. Boom. Mistake number 3. Okay. 4th mistake was Treasurer's office gets notice. Hey, don't void them checks. Hold on to them checks for 7 days. We think we figured out where they're at. Controller's office was not aware of that. So this is where the communication, this is why we're here today, because that happened. The chances of that ever happen again, Chairman, would probably never happen again. I mean, what's the chances of the mail, people say we lost all your mail? That probably will never happen again. We understand we have an invoice problem, invoice not getting paid. We had a computer problem with these checks being printed that were bad. Okay. They were looked at. Yeah, okay, I think they will probably pass. I mean, I write checks all the time and I don't write that good, and they get to where they're supposed to go. But anyway, you know, so yeah, they made a judgment call. Ashley wasn't comfortable with it, which is fine. That's her job as a position. If she's not comfortable with it, she'll say, hey guys, I'm just not comfortable with it. But the procedures that happened here today, I mean, through this whole thing about checks being missed out, cashed, was a series of events, guys, that would probably never happen again. Like I said, what's the chance of the mail? People come and say, we lost all your mail. That's what started the whole thing. And then it was just simply communication between the departments to get on the page before you know it. We had avoided. Debbie thought she canceled them. She can't cancel them. There's something that got through. And so here we are today. You know what I'm saying? I think Jody, Ashley, the girls over here, they just need to sit down. The chances of us repeating whatever happened here probably never happen again because them things just was fluke. And especially with the mail. We lost all your mail. So everybody panicked. Okay. So I think, like I said, communication, get everybody together, sat down. I got confidence in everybody in that office. I got confidence in her office, Ashley's office. I think we got a good team here. It's time to get back together. We sat down, we go through the things, we bring back to the board a plan that this never happens again. The chances of ever happening again, I don't think will ever happen again because it was weird, to say the least. You know what I'm saying? But I think we need to get this invoice problem straightened out. And I know, not saying that people in here, but I know that they're still finding invoices over there from March, way early in March that have been filed and not, it's process, and they're going through it, you know. But I think everybody just needs to get together, go through with their plan. Once this whole thing clears up, these checks that the mailman thought they lost, they didn't lost, we're going to sort it out when that happens. That's all we can do. Because it was 3 or 4 things, chain of events that caused this whole thing to happen. You know, the invoice thing is a problem. Because I'm just finding out that with you guys, you know, we need to get it straightened out, which is very simple. Hey, you pay the invoices when they come in. You don't file them, you pay them, you know. But that's all I got to say, but I got confidence in the girls over there. Debbie has been working with HR with Renee for quite a while before Renee left. I'm confident she understands what she's doing. I think there's a chain of events that caused us to have this problem. And I don't think it'll happen again. But I think everybody needs to get together and sit down and say, okay, hey, this is what happened. This is where we made that mistake on this scenario. Let's not let that happen again. And the way you do that, by communicating. So that's all I got to say. I appreciate it, guys.
Thank you, Chairman.
Commissioner Mary Dryer does have her hand raised.
Mary, recognized?
Yes, I question the legality of having a commissioner make a statement during a meeting. You have 3 commissioners there now. He's giving his opinion, which in my opinion should not be done in this step.
Go ahead, Clerk Fetty.
It is an open meeting. It has been posted as an open meeting as long as no decisions are discussed or rendered. I believe it is appropriate for him to make a comment at the podium.
As a reporter, I don't agree, but go ahead.
So
Well, I think that needs to be resolved, Mary, in the sense that it is an open meeting. It was posted, and the fact is that all the commissioners could be here, as long as it's not being voted on. And there's only 2 of us here that you haven't heard anything about anything coming to a motion, other than accepting the agenda, which was my mistake. So I would check that out. Ashley, thank you, Mary. Ashley, any further thoughts? Because you're up next as
yeah,
well.
well, further thoughts, I guess, is that I'm a little concerned that the board chair had a recap of the events in my office that took place without ever speaking to me. He's recapping the scenario with not correct information, and presenting it as if we spoke. So I am kind of concerned because I never spoke to him other than yesterday in this meeting.
He was in my office, Ashley, when you came in about the checks being lost.
So he heard me say that the checks from the 319 batch.
I'm just saying he was there for that one. I can't confirm what he may have heard when he was down the hallway when you were talking to others. He was in my office that particular day.
We're really getting into finger pointing again, and I understand that that's part of a healing process. I realize that maybe not a healing process, but realistically, as the board, I speak for at least Commissioner Cook and myself, and I always give Commissioner Cook leeway to interrupt anytime he would like.
100% agree with you,
We
sir.
just want a resolution as well as the chair coming forward that, as the chair had said, will never, ever happen again, even though it's been happening in the past. And our procedures aren't quite accurate. we just need to address this appropriately, but one thing I do want to circle around back, and it may sound like I'm wishy-washy, but when it comes to when I said the responsibility of assurances is upon the staff that brings you those checks, that is absolutely true, but the buck stops between you two. When you see something, the board, your elected officials, you have the sole responsibility to make sure that at the end of the line, if it's gone through all that, which it has, to make sure that mistakes are made. To the ability that you have and the information that you have. I mean, that's really important, that you don't have the copious background of checking the invoices against the amounts. You'd have to increase that. All right, so we'll look forward to, in a timely manner, a solution coming back. And certainly the board would appreciate updates related to any other occurrences that are happening because of this situation. Would you agree? So we don't have, the board doesn't have surprises. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
You're not up next, but you
No,
may be seated. So we appreciate that round discussion on a situation that we look forward to a solution. Item number 2 under new business is been added to Mir's discussion with, which is going to be Shelley. We're
Chairman.
bringing us up to you, or Erica.
Chairman.
Yes.
Break. Please, sir. I don't care.
Did that come from the back row?
No,
All right,
but I think people agree.
all right. 10-minute break. Yeah, recycle. Thank you, everyone, for the brief break there. We're going to resume the Board of Finance meeting once again, and we'll start off with Erica with a presentation related to a MERS discussion, defined benefits, unfunded liability.
I do have a couple extra of the 2023 actuarial reports for you commissioners. There's, including the appendix is online. If you need it printed, please let me know.
I will need a full copy printed for the record, please.
Okay, I believe Angie is working on that for you
Okay, great.
right now.
Perfect.
Brought it in,
She brought me the agenda finally.
which that's what it is.
Oh, perfect. Okay, that's what you're referring to is
Yes,
that.
yes,
Perfect. Okay,
yes.
thank you very much.
And then this, what I provided right now is just one of the years, and it's only the actuarial. There
That is not in the agenda?
It is in the agenda, but there's also the appendixes in the agenda.
Okay.
So you have more.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thank you for clarifying that.
You're welcome. And then I also have two other attachments that were not in the packet that, quick fetting, I do believe I provided you a printed copy.
That would be these.
Yes.
Thank
Yes.
you.
So the one with the green highlight is a very brief summary of the actuarials, the three that were in the packet, plus all the way back to 2006, showing you the funded ratio levels of the defined benefit. So what we're speaking on today is only the defined benefit. So as you will see in 2016 is when we bonded. So that's when our funding level got the closest to 100%. So I had an opportunity to meet with MERS and ask some clarifying questions. And so they will be coming back to meet with the board and answer all your questions, but I wanted to truly understand the process and why are we continuing to dip below in funding? Why does that number continue to deteriorate even though we bonded? So there's a few issues that he explained to me. One is in the documentation regarding the bond. It stated that once a division had no more active members, we did not have to pay on that. So I was unclear, why are we then getting a bill from MERS for these divisions where there are no active members? So that was the first issue, and it's a clarifying issue. In the eyes of MERS, active means a former employee who is drawing a pension, or a beneficiary who is eligible for a pension, or an employee who is eligible for a pension but not yet drawing. So pretty much anybody who could potentially draw from that division in the eyes of MERS equals active on their reporting. Where in our eyes, active means an active employee actively contributing. So that is part of the error, is what did active mean? So when you look at the reports from MERS, you need to know that when it says active, it does not mean active employed. It means active with money in the defined benefit that could potentially draw, or a beneficiary of that employee. The next thing is our current funding rate. So we're currently at 86%. To me, that's alarming. And so when I talked to them, he said that actually we are right at the median. The median is 60 to 80%. So the fact that we are at 86%, which is above the median, he said in his words, it is not alarming. However, he did give us some options of things that we can do to try to prevent that from continuing to dip. And I'll get to those in just a moment. The next thing is, when do we worry? So yes, I'm worried at the 86%, but at what point should we be alarmed? And he explained that the state does get involved at 60% funding ratio. And what that means is that we then have to report to the state what we're doing to fix that. Obviously, we don't want to get to that level. However, it does not mean it's crisis. It means you then have one more reporting aspect. So he said, don't worry about that right now. You're 86%, but here's some things that you can do to try to fix it. So one of the problem is in the past, the number of active contributing was greater than the number of retirees. Well, we closed the defined benefit. So as people retire, that ratio is shifting and they're going to be more drawing than there are paying in. So from the accounting standpoint and the HR standpoint, we need to know how do we address that issue so that there is money available to pay those bills when they come due. Because the current method is we allocate a percentage on the payroll or a flat dollar amount, on the payroll. So it's a employer cost. So for example, if there's 5 people in that unit and the monthly bill is $5,000, each of those 5 individuals, whatever budget they're hitting, gets hit for $1,000 because it's the monthly amount for that division. Well, as those folks retire, what do we do? Do we take that 5,000 and now we divide it by 3, 2, 1? And then what when there isn't any? So they did send us some reports that we literally just got them Wednesday. I have not vetted all of that data out. They're giving me specific liability per employee, per retiree, which I will then have to input what department is that employer retired from. So we can see, are we hitting the budgets accordingly? And at that point, I will come to the board and ask for direction and say, this is what I believe to be true. This is the liability for the clerk's office, the controller's office, this office, this office. And so at that moment, I will come back to the board and seek some more direction to go from the previous method to potentially a new method. But I wanted you to understand what are we looking at and why are we looking at it so that we can accurately hit the budgets accordingly. But what do we do about the unfunded liability is the primary issue. So unfortunately, there's only 2 solutions. Well, there's 3 solutions. One is you do nothing. And that might necessarily not be the right choice. However, one option is changing the defined benefit that our retirees receive. And we don't think that's a viable option. Most of these are in the CBA. You know, we don't feel that that's an option. The last option is to create a surplus division. So in layman's terms, it's a generic division with no specific employees tied to it that the county can put funds into to update our overall funding level. But when a specific division dips below, we can then allocate funds from that surplus division to Division 3.
Another division.
If there is a division that falls below a certain level, we can take money that we've allocated into this generic division, surplus division, and move it over. So those are our options, is put money aside in a generic surplus within MERS or do nothing. There is a potential that we could give them a lump sum payment, but how they explain that is it's similar to when we fund it. When you give a lump sum payment, what you're doing is you're reducing the minimum payment due. So like your credit card, when you pay extra, it just reduces your minimum payment due, but your interest still continues to accrue, right? So they explained that if we give them a lump sum payment and that minimum due changes and we follow that minimum payment, the ratios that are continuing to dip will continue to dip. So I know that's a lot of information in a really short period of time. And I will be inviting MERS back to go over this with a full board. But I wanted you to be aware of what I found, what I'm working on regarding the unfunded liability and the impact it could potentially have on future budgets. You
Chairman,
have questions?
on this sheet right here,
Yes.
they gave you the last 4 years. And 1 year investment, 5 year and 10 year. Why did they only give us 2020 through 2023.
This is, I pulled this out of the actuarials.
Oh, okay. All right.
So I can provide you with all of these actuarials. We have them.
Yeah, if you could for us, or at least for me, I'd like to look at that.
Definitely. And how would you like those provided? And are we providing them to the full board?
Yeah.
Just email them in a
Email.
PDF to all the board? Is that acceptable?
Chairman, I agree with that. Do you?
I agree. Part of the meeting, we're going to discuss it.
I have
How
another-
many years back do you want
Just through 2006,
for this whole
Yeah,
range? Thank you.
please. One more question. Do we know how we rate in reference to other counties as far as percentage wise?
Well, the only thing I know specific is he said the median is between 60 and 80%.
Okay.
So the fact that we are above 80% in his opinion is good.
Okay.
However, I don't want to wait until we dip to take action.
Right.
Any action that you take takes 2 years before it affects
Right.
the funding number. So we obviously don't want to wait until it's an emergency before we take action. And some of the things that we're going to do in our office is look at how are we booking this and how are we paying this? So could we pay a little extra in one division if that division is dipping below? And then we will bring that to the board and say, maybe this one division needs a little shot in the arm.
Chairman, one more question, sorry.
Please.
This 8.5 by 14.
Yes.
So about the middle of that page, it says number in division. And at the very bottom, it says 70. So we have 70 either current employees or former employees in the
So-
defined benefit.
The number in division is active employees.
Okay. So
Yes.
70 active still.
70 actives, yes.
Okay.
So
Thank
the overall is, number in division. Excuse me, let me make sure that that's not from 2016. Correct. The one, that says number in division just to the left of the 2016, or excuse me, just to the right. I apologize. That was the
Oh.
number in 2016.
So the fourth column, EE in division,
Yes,
152,
yes.
that includes retired and active. Correct?
Well, let me verify that number is correct.
Okay.
I believe that that was the number in 2016. But, because currently we have it's in headcount. Yes, so that number, was the number in that division in 2016 when we closed the division.
Thank you.
Yes, and then the difference would be in that difference column, so showing 11 minus 4 equals 7.
Correct.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for the question.
So the EE in division is from 2016. That was the number in the division.
Yes,
And then the number in division 25 is what is still remaining as an active.
active employee.
Okay, thank you for
Yes.
that clarification.
And if you go all the way to the fourth from the end, so we're down 82,
Yes,
and that reflects the reason we're in the position we are, because there's less people putting in and more people retired. But
Correct.
that's every defined benefit that's ever been made.
that's correct.
Well, and then when we close defined benefit,
Right.
we would not be, nobody new would be contributing.
Which is even
either.
worse,
So
yeah, which is even worse,
am I understanding that would be correct as well?
100%. Because GM, Ford, everybody has the same issues.
Yes. So my question to MERS was, if we bonded and we paid off our unfunded liability, why is this continuing? And he explained, the market, the assumptions, which are in the appendix.
Right.
So the last 3 years assumption rules are in that appendix. In the emails I will send you of the other ones, you have to click a link to get to the appendix to see what were their assumptions. So things that, impacted it, they have recently changed the life expectancy. So that changed our unfunded liability. Again, these are actuarials, these are estimates, right? So people probably were living longer even before they changed the assumptions,
Right.
but now they've updated their accounting method to reflect that. And that is not specific to MERS. That's been across the board and other things as well.
Excuse me, did he tell you what mortality tables they use now? Is that
He-
80 or 81?
He did not answer
Okay.
that. He said that he would get back to me on that and for me to check the appendix.
Thank you.
But the appendix is 60 or 70 pages.
Right.
I did peruse, but I did not do a deep
So it
dive.
might be in here?
It is not in there.
Oh, in the
It is in
appendix,
the
I have-
PDF.
Gotcha, okay.
So the actuarial report has a separate appendix
Okay.
for the assumptions.
Thank you.
Yes. So again, obviously not seeking any action from the finance committee. It was merely informational to let you know what we found out, what we're working on, and that we will be bringing a potential new method of accounting for it through the payroll system once we vet out which departments have the liability and is it matching what we're currently doing. If the percentages are matching what we're currently doing, then would probably be no change. But if it's not matching, we can have that discussion and get advice from the board on how they'd like to proceed.
Looking forward to your analysis, Commissioner Cook, from your background. This is
Thank you.
Any other
interesting.
questions?
I do. And I noticed plants in the back of the room. I just noticed that. Back in 2016, we didn't have this concern. And maybe it was a dog and pony show. I was there. You were there too as well, Claire. Were you involved? What a fun.
Oh, boy. She's trying to hide in the back.
Well, I didn't. I mean, there's only probably two of us that were in administration.
As far as the actual, when we decided to bond, pay
Yes,
off our debt,
you're right.
well, we seen what was happening. If we didn't, it was dropping way faster than this. We were aware that, by closing the defined benefit plans, of course, we worked with the unions. We wanted to still be able to provide what we could at that time. But what happens, and we all knew it was gonna happen, is once you shut those defined benefit plans down, you don't have the money coming back in. So we did it in two phases. As you remember, the first phase was we opened up new defined benefit plans that had a smaller percent of the employer responsibility and a higher on the employee. When we seen where that was heading, the second determination was made that we have to shut it down completely. We put up defined contribution plans, which wasn't real popular, but we did have a lot of meetings with the union. We had a lot of sit downs. We talked through it, that we still want to have some type of retirement plan for all employees. And at that time, that was the best decision to make.
Chairman, do you remember what the percentage was in 16 when we decided to bond?
78% is 2015.
And the projections moving forward put us down. We see a drop. I mean, we see a drop, excuse me, we see a drop coming now because of the assumptions, the investments, the volatility of the market. And I think we called MERS in here one time before the finance part to say what's going on with our investments. Because when the market was doing really well and we got a report, it said, we lost money in the market.
Yeah, we did.
How could that be? The next year, all of a sudden, we did it really well. So it was the timing and the year.
Well, I
As soon as I
think,
got that report, I made that phone call.
and I think if you look at this, it truly reflects the problem of not having enough people putting money into. Because when you look at 22, it was at 88%, and 23, it dropped down to 85.74, but the market was up 12%. It just cannot make that up. The market can.
Yeah, Claire, when we talked about that, I mean, this is a number of years ago, it was, we should have you as retainer, by the way, just for the historical perspective of numbering, so appreciate that.
Still have a little bit going on up there.
Did we not discuss the future in terms of, we knew the funding was gonna be less and less and the advantage, if you look at this, as time goes on, it's less and less contributing. Do you recall where they thought we'd make this up at?
We talked about, because every year when those reports come out, it says, you know, this is what they recommend that you could pay, or you can pay this amount every month. So there's those options that you can put more and above over you have. There's no guarantee though, even if you're doing that, like Erica mentioned, that it doesn't mean that you're going to stay up at that level. The biggest thing they did on us was changed assumptions. And that dropped our number quickly. And it's like, why would you change the assumptions to that level? And they keep saying, well, people are living longer. Therefore, that liability is going to drag out a little bit longer. Therefore, we're going to hit you a little bit hard.
Did we ever contribute excess into this account over those years?
Yes, we have.
I thought we did.
And we also discussed probably within the last 3 years, the PGS money
Oh,
and
yeah.
using a chunk of that at one time, which we did not do.
Chairman, I'd like to read you something just real quick.
Yes, please do.
GM pension funds funding ratio was 95% as of December 31st, 2023, down from 100% the previous year. This means that the assets in the funds are 95% of the projected benefit obligations, indicating a slight shortfall. The fund's assets totaled $42 billion, while projected benefit obligations were $44 billion. So in answer to your question, eventually, I hate to say it, but there's proof right there with a huge company like that.
Retirees like myself are pulling all their money and we're getting paid. So.
Right. But that's what
Sorry.
that's what a defined benefit. All right, you can sit down now.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions for Eric?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And just know when I send those, it will probably be multiple emails. So I do apologize if I'm spamming you, but they are large documents.
Okay.
So there'll be multiple emails.
Maybe we could get the Cliff Notes version.
You have.
All right, thank you, Erica. I guess we all knew that that was coming. We just had to wait. Well, maybe we didn't all know. All right, item number 3 is fund balance investment options, and it's actually
I have nothing provided for you to look at because the point is hopefully going to take quick. So, just wanting to know, I was looking at, we've been hearing projections of like the shortfalls for the county coming into next year. So I was looking for direction, from the board, if they would be interested in me going through the fund balances and investing some of the money that we have in the fund balances to help benefit the county in the coming years. Currently, the fund balance just sits in the checking account and it's not invested. Because we do the modified accrual, as of December 31st, when the revenues and the expenses are netted, I don't know what that actually is until the audit is complete in June. So at that time, the excess additional revenue is put into the fund balance, but we're in the next year. So we're not actively investing that. When I was reading, it's what I found as who can decide to invest that would be the finance committee, if there is one, or the board if there is not. But before I went and did a bunch of additional work to figure out what those funds would in fact entail, I wanted direction of if this even a possibility that you would be interested in before I wasted time getting you figures. Not that I'm going to go do it with an approval today. I will go, meaning I'm not going to go invest money. I will come back with figures for you to review and then make a determination.
So just, if you have questions?
No question, but I don't have an issue with her pursuing that at all.
It's a very interesting.
The way it
proposition.
states is you have to give me the direction,
Right.
but I'm kind of coming to you, but,
Would you provide a pro forma of projections in terms of investment? I mean, be short term, well, right? I mean, the cash in these accounts, could you give us simply the amount of cash in the accounts that you're thinking of investing and what you anticipate return to be? And that the county would realize with the investment?
yeah, I could put together, like what the excess revenue would be and then, throw a few different investment options together, projecting short-term versus a longer term and what that interest return would be, to present.
And what's the likelihood that, and maybe you know the answer to this one, what's the likelihood that with the cash sitting there over the years, how often had we not ever had to dip into it? Any instances of that? Is there any risk in that aspect?
So in my analysis, it would include that. I'd be looking at history of how often, it'd be
We,
calculated in there.
I'm assuming you'd stack them too. So a 3-month would come due and if we needed it then or whatever,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. And, Chairman, I mean, I don't know how long ago, not very long ago, you said how much you brought into the county with your investments already, 180? Do you
Over
remember?
1 million.
1 million,
Yeah.
sorry. So, I mean, I think if she could have more money to work with, I mean, I think it's something we need to really, really consider, especially looking at the direction.
Very
Okay.
intriguing.
I will work on that, and provide it to you. Is it okay to just bring it in front of the full board? Or do you want another meeting? Like, I don't,
Board, I don't have a problem.
because of what I read, it said this finance committee, which is why I had emailed asking for the
Right.
meeting. So I don't know if it's something the full board can, I don't understand. Do you make motions in the finance? There's no motion. So
No,
it
no
would still
motion.
have to come back to the full
Yeah.
board regardless.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
might as well.
So I would recommend after you have your determinations that we put it on a committee of the whole underneath the finance section. And then the two commissioners here today can enlighten the rest of the board as to what was provided and what was asked of. And then you would be able to give your report as to what you found.
Bring them up to speed.
Mhm.
Committee, the whole meeting.
Perfect.
I apologize for that, miss.
That's okay. I think the number that you're kind of saying, so the million in total is every fund within the county. So you have road and medical care and all of these things, general fund, so I'm sure that number came from some fund, but in total.
Well, thank you, Ashley, for your insight and your continued advice related to finances. I mean, that's never been done, correct? Have we ever done this?
No,
We just let it sit and,
yes.
wow. That'll be an interesting projection.
Okay, thank
Thanks a
you.
lot.
Thank you. And our additional item, we have an unpaid invoice.
Come on, girl.
All my stuff back, but I think it was the IT
Not working.
item that we kind of already
Oh.
touched on. So
We're not even sure if it's part of that check issue.
it
So-
was not part of the 319 check issue. I know that. It went out on 327, I think I told him.
Well, it's only 427. I mean,
But
it's only a month.
my concern is I don't know if it was one of the sloppy looking checks where
Oh, I got you.
it is in the mail and the mail is struggling to deliver it. Option could be, we can verify with the bank whether or not that's been paid or cleared. We could stop payment and we could reissue a new one.
And I'm trying to find out with the vendor if they have received it. I just haven't gotten it. I would probably prefer to wait until after do that.
So.
Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
And the next item I added on was just a mention to place on the statutory finance agenda for our next Board of Commissioners meeting. A correction of yesterday related to per diems. Need further information? Yesterday, we discovered that none of us had the link that would open to review the statutory finance. We didn't have any paper reports whatsoever. We approved a per diem report that did not exist. So that's why at the end, it was paused to say, I paused it on the link. I can't get into the link. But at that time, I didn't realize that nobody else could get into it. I thought it was just me. I had approached that once before. And I thought it was whatever I was doing might have been an error. But anyway, it's got to go back.
Okay.
Krista.
So you're referring to this one meeting or all the meetings in 2020?
Just one, just the last meeting.
Okay, because Debbie said that she also emailed out those attachments separately. So did you receive that secondary email with the attachments?
Well, not after the meeting?
No,
No.
before the
No.
meeting. She
That's
said
it.
she sent out the agenda, but then she also sent out the attachments separately.
I do not believe that I received them.
So
So we did
the
figure
matter
out
at
that
hand here is
issue.
not that issue. The links will be fixed, I'm sure. It's the fact that there was no per diem report to approve
And signed, correct?
and sign. I did not sign it. I noticed the reports were still here this morning. So I thought about that. And I just flipped through them and it wasn't there, so please do correctly. And going forward, we'll make sure before that we have access.
In looking at the agenda that was emailed out very late on Wednesday, like 7:30 PM, which was much after business hours for anybody to review or look at them. If you scroll through that version, it does appear that there was the first report, which we would review. The second report, and on that one, I am seeing a per diem. So it looks like there was a per diems in the amount of $650. So I think they were in the agenda potentially, but there was not a report here for the commissioners to sign and authorize. So they were presented into that. I don't have my agenda packet here with me to verify that they were in with that, but on that very late email, it does appear that they were there. But you'll still need the report
Right.
in order to sign and approve that. And that should be signed and approved before those per diem checks are placed in the mail. So I think this is just a new concern that has been brought up.
I never hit the board table.
Which those checks were just handed to me during the meeting to mail out, correct?
They probably were, and I don't feel that they should be
I agree.
because the board has not signed off on the report.
Chairman, I think in yesterday's meeting, I think Ian got it straight with, so we can click on it instead of going through the email.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
well, I believe that there was, an issue with how the person that created the agenda finalized it.
Okay.
And you were sent out a PDF version rather than being uploading the HTML version. And you would need the HTML in order to make those links work. In a PDF, links don't work.
Right.
And that was what Ian said. So it wasn't that he could fix it right then.
No,
It's-
not right then, but
it's
for
gonna
the
be a-
future.
It's gonna be a training issue with
Okay.
the person.
All right.
Who my understanding is Debbie creates the statutory finance agenda now. Angie House creates the Board of Commissioners agenda. So I think it's within that, and it's just that learning curve to make sure that we're uploading the correct version.
And for me, it's just easier.
Much easier.
Yeah.
Well,
instead of
the,
going
the
through all the
purpose
agenda.
of iCompass was to eliminate all of you getting an agenda this size.
Yeah, no kidding.
You know, I have to retain it because I'm the keeper of the record.
Right.
All of you don't necessarily need a 350-page agenda. So the purpose of us going to iCompass many years ago was so that you could use the technology you're provided and then be able to hot link and go to the necessary attachment that you need.
And I mean, I'm not saying anybody was at fault. I just like from this point forward to be able to have that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the
It'd be
goal. Mhm.
And it's my understanding from yesterday, whether it was with Ian or who, I'm not sure that has now been corrected.
Perfect.
I'm not sure if
Good.
Ian assisted or whoever did, but thank you to whoever did. So
Yeah, Ian does not necessarily isn't involved in that part of it, but if he was helpful, then that's great.
he just said it looks like there may be a little, I'm not sure of his exact words when he was sitting over here, but it has been
I heard
corrected
him.
now. So
Yeah.
yeah, I wasn't sure.
I think from the Commissioner Cooks set the standard, you just want a paper copy and easy access so we can look at it when you're approving. There's what we want.
You need the per diem report at the end of the meeting
So we
to be
can
able to
sign
sign in.
And ability to look at it ahead of time.
So we'll have to put that on the record at our next statutory finance meeting, that they are getting signed at that meeting because the report wasn't presented.
Fine.
Even though there's a motion, it wasn't presented at that point.
Can I interrupt you?
But
Can I
I
speak?
know about interrupting, but you may step to the mic.
Can I address the board, please? So I wasn't sure with the iCompass, and I did push that button to have it emailed. And to my knowledge, it was emailed, but in the instructions that were left with me, I was told to also email them separately beyond just the iCompass. So I sent out an email on Wednesday, April 9th at 3:06 PM for the statutory finance agenda for the next day's meeting. And before they were signed, the checks were not sent until actually the checks that I gave to Ashley during the meeting this morning.
So do you have
Or
the signed
is it-
reports? So I think that's the end question.
Yes,
And they're signed
yes,
for the per diems.
yes. Well,
You have the first two, you have the
for
daily
the
finance.
statutory,
Yeah, but you also need a per diem report. There should have been 3 sets of reports for the commissioners to sign, and you have 2. So they did not get to sign the per diem report, which is all your boards and commissions and the Board of Commissioners and such as that, which would have been the end attachment, which is not what you have in front of you.
oh, I have it on my desk.
And that was not presented,
wasn't
that was not presented to the board, and that's the issue at hand for signature. So those checks can't.
They were included.
In the agenda. But the report was not put on the board table for signatures, my understanding.
Okay, but,
So they can't be
So-
sent until the report is signed.
okay, I can go grab that if you want it signed.
They
No,
can't at this
the whole
point.
board has to.
Okay,
The-
I
That's
gotcha.
a full board
Okay, I'm
action.
still on their learning process.
Yep, that's a
Okay, thank
full
you.
board action, not a finance committee action. And so it'll have to be brought back to the statutory finance committee for reaffirmation and signature.
Until the
And
15th.
those checks will not be able to be mailed out. So those people are about 3 weeks out before they'll be able to receive those payments. Because we're not till March or May 15th.
Let me just ask a
Which is-
protocol question.
Yeah.
Since per diem reports were approved yesterday
They were by motion.
by motion. The only one who signs that is the finance chair.
I thought all of you were signing them,
No. Not on the per diem.
Finance chair.
not on the per diem.
Only those other two.
Okay, I was thinking that you signed all of them.
I signed, well, we all signed those two,
Okay,
but if you go get that report and show to the clerk, you will see only one signatory, which is usually the finance chair.
okay.
Yeah, so
Then-
theoretically, then it could be signed post.
And I think we should still clearly state that on the record at the next statutory finance meeting as well,
Absolutely,
Oh, yeah.
to clarify that.
absolutely. But for the expediency of the checks, would you agree that it would be,
If you're the only one that signs it, then
you know,
yes.
the only one that, which I inherited, well, but I inherited from Tom, so.
So just to clarify, once you sign that and we're doing payroll, we're in the process of payroll, which will be, the process starts on Monday. People get paid on the next Thursday. So once you sign
This
that,
had
we
nothing
can
to do
include
with-
it in the
Nothing to do
payroll.
with
Per
payroll.
diems have nothing to do with payroll, I don't believe,
Per diems are paid in payroll. Through payroll.
but not,
Not the ones from yesterday. though.
those ones are printed, I believe, and you already gave them to Ashley is what you just stated.
Those ones. run
Those are
through-
mileage.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're per diem.
Mileage and
Mileage is usually run as a separate check, per diem is a separate check. So like my board of canvassers get two checks. I have to submit two vouchers to you.
Mhm.
So were the per diem checks approved yesterday in the check run that you gave to Ashley this morning?
No, because per diems are done through payroll.
So they won't be processed for another week?
This next week, the following week.
Per diems are always run first payroll.
Second payroll.
Second payroll of the month. So yeah, we're okay there with that particular, yes. I would like to.
That explains why people are usually calling, wondering where their per diem checks are.
Yeah.
I don't believe you have the per diem checks in your batch is what I think we just gathered. They'll be run with the payroll.
well, and Commissioner Cook, I think where we're gonna leave it is if you'd like to have it signed, you can present it today and I can still sign it. If
Yes.
not, we can just
Yes.
wait till.
Agree with you, sir. I'm
Thank you.
not signing.
They work out the details, just make sure we have the per diem reports in paper when we have a statutory finance. All right, thank you very much. That concludes all the new business this morning, this afternoon. We don't have any old business. I don't believe we have any correspondence resolutions. I would think if we met again, we could strike those. Strike the correspondence resolutions. I'm not sure.
Yes,
Or
it should have. They
liaison
should not have
reports,
been
we
on
don't-
this
I don't
agenda.
think Commissioner Cook or I want to go through that again. And is there any other business that's necessary that we have missed? Not hearing or seeing any other business. And we'll move into extended public comment. Does anyone like to address the board with extended public comment this afternoon? Yes, please do so. Just state your name.
I'm Detective Sergeant Nitz with the Sheriff Department. I'm actually the president of the PLC Command Staff Unit. And I just wanted to address the MERS situation. Basically, we were told years ago, when they took away the defined benefit from new hires, that the bond was basically guaranteeing the retirement for the people that were getting the defined benefit at the time. So it's quite concerning that, I mean, they brought up the option of possibly getting rid of that. I just wanted to note that the Sheriff's Department is currently hemorrhaging employees. And my feeling, and I believe the feeling of several other people at the Sheriff's Department, is that the reason these people are leaving is because we don't have a defined benefit retirement program. I've talked to most, if not all, of the people that have recently left, and they said that is the reason, that and pay. One guy left yesterday, was his last day. He's going to Bay County for a defined benefit retirement program. And I asked him, I said, tell me honestly, if we had a defined benefit retirement, would you stay? And he said, can't give you a for certain answer, but he said most likely. The last full staffing that I think we had at the sheriff's department was probably 2016. I think you can probably see a correlation to why we haven't been fully staffed at the sheriff's department since 2016. I was actually at a union conference yesterday where MERS was there. They said there had been a trend years ago for people to go from defined benefit to defined contribution, which is what we did. They said it's now trending back to defined benefit plans. Obviously, it makes sense with the paperwork you guys received that the less people that pay in, the less funding you're going to have. So it only makes sense when that was taken away, there's less people paying in, so not as many people to fund it. I don't know how many additional employees we've had since 2016, but I would have to venture a guess that it's quite high. So we have very few people paying in, and essentially a lot of people have retired since then, and we're paying out way more than we're paying in. MERS did say that they do a cost assessment evaluation where basically they'll look into how much it would be for you to go back into a defined benefit program. They said there is a charge for this assessment. I have no idea what that charge would be. They said the county could reach out to them and discuss this, and they would do basically, they said there's so many different factors involved because obviously we've been out of it for 9 years now. So they have to figure in getting, you know, if you would cut off from a certain date and those people are now in a defined benefit and obviously new hires and all that. So that would be something that's an option to reach out to MERS to see what the cost would be for that evaluation. And then I just wanted to mention like what Clayette said, that they worked with the unions. I know initially, like I believe I pay in 4.7% to my defined benefit program. Then it went up to 6.7 where some of the newer people, and I believe the final average compensation percentage or multiplier was changed for those people as well. Then essentially it was forced on the unions. Basically we were told that, no, you have to change that all new hires after this contract are going to be in defined contribution. So it wasn't really worked with. It was like, you have to do this. You know, and I go back to the fact that we were told, the people with the defined benefit, that this bond would basically guarantee everything. And it's, like I said, very concerning that that option was even brought up that, oh, we could get rid of that. So essentially why I'm talking to you is that we just at least need to look into bringing back the option of a defined benefit retirement. I know I speak for the sheriff department, specifically the command unit, but I believe I'm probably speaking for most county employees or different divisions. I'm sure retention and recruitment is a huge issue. And they talked about that at the MERS people yesterday at the conference, that that's the main reason they're seeing the trend going back to defined benefit is because everybody's having recruitment and retention issues. All right, I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Excuse me, but I do have something to add, if you don't mind,
Or ask.
or ask.
Do you know who you spoke to at MERS?
Yes.
There were 3 people there.
Any
I don't,
idea?
I don't remember their names.
Are you mic'd in?
Yes.
Okay, I can't see. Good.
When MERS was here the other day, and they will be coming back to a full board another day, so you can address them as well, like in person. They said that when we bonded, we lost that opportunity to go back to defined benefit.
Well, I mean,
There's some law with the bonding. Now, I wasn't clear then, and I'm vetting what his statement is out. I can't verify that what he said is true, but that is.
And maybe it's something that, I don't know how many years, was it a 15-year bond or a 20-year bond?
30.
It was a 30-year bond. So maybe the bond would need to be paid off or something. I don't know.
So just for clarification, that's why I asked you if you had any idea who you spoke to, because we did just ask all these questions and it was a never. And then I asked about a hybrid. And again, it's not an option for us. So if there's any way, one, to find out who you may have spoke to that maybe we could check in with, but as Erica just said, we are bringing MERS into a full board. So these kinds of questions from someone such as yourself, since you were provided different information, may be able to be addressed.
Well, essentially they were talking to the whole
The group,
conference.
but right,
I didn't speak to them
Well, but there was a
personally.
statement made that just
Yeah.
last week, Eric and I were
Yeah.
told,
And
by-
maybe these other people he's talking about don't have a bond. I don't know.
okay.
But I don't know. the answer.
But we're always willing to look into these types of items, which is why we are bringing MERS back to a full board. But we were just told last week, and I asked about both those options. What about a hybrid? A hybrid would be very helpful.
Which they do offer that as well.
We are not eligible for that either.
Well, obviously, those are questions we need to.
Yes, yes, agreed.
So if you do have any documentation from that conference, you could refer back to and say, okay, the guest speaker was that.
I believe I do have an
If you
itinerary.
could send us information, that would be helpful. So that when we talk to our rep, we can say, listen, this other person said this. Who's right?
Yeah, because he did say that they trended away, now they're trending back. So obviously there must be some way to, I mean, to me, I find it hard to believe that they would say you could never go back once you switch. That seems odd because they're obviously,
Not eligible.
yeah.
I mean, really, I
They
did
said
just
they're-
last,
They're a $17
Wednesday or
billion
Thursday? Yes.
company. They have 84% of the municipal retirement in the state of Michigan. I mean, they're obviously a huge company. I don't think they're going to turn people away per se, but I don't know the answers to that specific.
we will be bringing them back. So if you find anything in between, that would be helpful.
I do have the itinerary,
Okay.
so I should have the guys.
Right. That would be helpful. And then we can reach out to our rep and say, this gentleman was at a conference, spoke to, heard this other person speak. How is that different than what you told us? Then, we can be prepared for those questions later.
So we have 21 years left to pay off on this bond.
I would have to verify, but it was a 30-year bond, if I recall. I wasn't here when it happened, but I did look into it last year. So yeah.
I believe it was 30 years as well. But
I mean, that problem-
Commissioner
I
Bidwell,
looked
do you
at
have
the-
a?
I looked at the numbers on the one sheet and I see the one unit for the sheriff's department is labeled as command. There's only two people in that unit, so it's like $11,000 a paycheck or a month. Essentially is allocated
Expensive.
from each employee. And I know both of those are eligible to retire, so essentially that $22,000 a month is gonna have to come from somewhere
well,
eventually.
that's not per employee, that's the whole division divided.
The
by
whole
the-
division was 22,000,
Okay,
so it's
yeah.
11,000 per.
Just a couple of comments. I know this is gonna go on.
Yes.
And Clay, once again, I'll just say you have free will to speak up. When this was a very, as you were there back then,
Mhm.
very controversial decision back then. And I remember the board bringing up, we had the one side, the financial side, and as Brad had mentioned, we saw the projections, which would strike fear. On the other side, the retention issue was brought up. And the retention issue was at that time counteracted with the Great Blue Cross Insurance, the insurance plan. That has eroded, which has really mitigated retention. And, now it's very hard to recruit, especially, and I'm not familiar with the creative plans that other counties have, but it's really put us in a bind, so to speak, because obviously our insurance, as good as it is, has decreased, so to speak, as an attraction. And I can understand what you're saying, and I caught it was saying, maybe we'll do away with the finance thing, and boy, now that would be a discussion in this room, I don't think that would ever happen.
Probably be an uprising.
Yeah, well, short of that, the last one was almost an uprising, but it was guaranteed. I mean, the new people coming in, it was you'd ever want to look a gift horse in the mouth. Even though MERS has 84%, we had a commissioner challenge MERS at one point in terms of better investment strategies, better companies. It was interesting. And I'm sure some of you maybe remember that, Shelley.
I do. I bet you Detective Nitz does as well.
But anyway, I just had to share that, and I know I appreciate your thoughts. It's going to be an issue financially, and that's why we're hoping Ashley comes back with an investment schedule that has some significant cash in it.
I plan on being a savior for your retirement.
All right. Well, thank you. Wishful thinking. Not to put pressure on you. All right. Anyone else want to spend a public comment? Oh, wait. Jody.
Thank you, commissioners, and thank you for this meeting today. I feel there's been a lot of robust, needed discussion. One thing that we talked about was how to potentially give Ashley ease at mailing the batch of checks that she's holding currently. We talked about giving her a viewing option for BSNA accounts payable. And if that doesn't, isn't a possibility, I would request that it be given to the clerk's office, as the clerk has statutory duties to be accounts payable. Anyway, that we would be the ones to do the cross-check and the verification, not another person within the controller administrator's office. I believe that oversight should come from an outside department, and I would be offering myself to be able to have that view only for those, so that the checks would be able to be brought to my office. We can cross-check the invoices before they are given to the treasurer's office. So that is a solution that I think would work well. Another thing that I think that needs to be considered and practiced is that the person preparing and issuing the checks should not be the same person voiding the checks. When we have anything to void, whether it's just a simple entry into a register of actions, or if it's a void of a financial entry into somebody's case in our case management system, the person that enters those is not allowed to delete them. So there has to be a checks and balance. So if one of my staff needs to delete something, they are then bringing me or my chief deputy the request, and they have to explain to us why the delete is needed in order, and we have to keep that and track that. So when we receive our audit from State Court Administrative Office and they pull a file that they can see something has been removed or deleted, we have the backup documentation to do that. So I do believe that is something that needs to immediately be put into place. So that's my two concerns with today's topics. Just to be able to put on the record, and I believe that Shelley is going to be taking care of this, but it is very important as the clerk to the board that when an agenda is prepared, that the clerk needs not just the agenda, but I need all of the attachments. So for as today, the agenda on my desk did not include all of the 350 pages of attachments. And I did request that, and I believe Shelley has that matter taken care of. But just to be on the record, that's my job, is to keep those records. And they're a permanent record. So virtual is not an option at this point. It's not a may, it's a shall when you read law and you read the retention schedule. That also brings me to our boards and commissions that minutes are taken. Those minutes and those boards and commissions are at your service. And just so you know, those minutes are a permanent record. And again, online versions is not appropriate. Those are not stored in the clerk's storage area. Those are stored on behalf of the Board of Commissioners. So just to go on record to clear those two things up, because I feel that there's been some confusion with those. The last thing that I would like to discuss is the timeliness, and I'm hopeful for improvement with our meeting that's to be scheduled. So this month, we were late in the clerk's office of getting our state reports submitted because we were not provided the necessary reports from the controller's office. Upon requesting them, we were provided them, but we were already late in submitting our reports and our payments to the state of Michigan. And just so everyone is aware, our March budget status reports were just emailed yesterday, and we're almost done with April. So in our discussions yesterday, when we are looking at the Parks and Rec, and Director Miller was resourceful to be able to pull some reports off from our website, I believe we may have been looking at February numbers, which would be okay because it's Parks and Rec and they don't spend a ton of money, so they should have been rather accurate. But had we been looking at an account or a department that has a lot more transactions, we could have been being a little bit skewed because we wouldn't have been looking at the most up to date. So I'm hopeful as we look at these processes that we can get back to having those budget status reports posted and sent out to us that first week, like what we were accustomed to. So, thank you.
Thank you.
And I don't know who I have to get the view only for BSNA if that's the route. Yeah.
Commissioner Cook, that's a question I had as well. I'm not sure. Is that an operational decision or is that a board decision?
I believe it should probably come from the board, as the board has appointed the controller to do that. And since we don't have a controller, we only have an interim administrator, and we would be taking those checks and balances and giving the opportunity for the clerk to assist in that checks and balance. I believe that it should come from the board. And, you know, that is not something that you can do today because we can't make motions today, but you could recommend that it be added to the committee of the whole meeting on May 12th.
For these checks or future? What are you?
I took it for the future.
Well,
Is that
I
what you're
think
saying, or
definitely
did you
for
not?
the future, but I think we need, you know, some type of verification, you know, as well.
Until we have a controller, I mean, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I took it the other way.
Right, because we have some pending
So-
checks that we have concern about that
so
we've talked a
interim-
great deal today about.
Correct.
Um,
I just want clarification on that.
yeah, I definitely think for the future, 100%. You know,
But to get access to cover the situation we have.
Yeah.
That's what you're requesting. which
Yes.
would come before the board, and you agree with putting?
Correct.
In your second item, what was the second request? I did not, I didn't write that one down.
my concern was the timeliness of reports that are getting sent to department heads and
Okay.
elected officials.
Sure.
And I'm hopeful that that will improve, but I think it's good to make that aware now that that impedes the rest of us. You know, we wait on those reports in order to be able to complete our functions. So I am hopeful that that will improve. My other concern was the care of the boards and commission minutes that are presented and that they need to be kept in paper form, as well as my responsibility to keep the agenda with the attachments to be kept in paper form. And then my other recommendation that I would hope gets implemented immediately is the person who needs to void something is the person that writes and processes that check out of the software program is not the same person that voids that check out, and that there's a process implemented in order to move forward and keep that checks and balance as an internal control.
Are you suggesting for being in minutes?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bless you.
Anyone else would like to address the board?
That lady.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Penny Reynes, and I'd like to thank Jody and Ashley for catching that glitch with these checks. If $180,000 would have been sent out again in cash, unrecoverable, because people don't send the money back, would that not be an appropriation of public funds? Something to consider. You stated that nobody's ever been paid, not paid. One of my election people was not paid till we questioned it and questioned it. She was paid finally, a couple months late. It was missed. Her name was missed. As far as the process of Ashley being handed checks in a public meeting, I think is very inappropriate. Is that the way it's always done? Very unprofessional. And I think she should be told that, should she's not here. So if she called the bank to stop payment on checks, which was not in her job description, she reprinted checks that was not in her job description without property authority. Is that insubordination of her job duties? Something else that needs to be considered. I mean, I, as a taxpayer, I don't want $180,000 of my money wasted. I'm sure nobody else does. I think her job performance should be looked into. I don't think she's fit for the job from what I see. That's all I got.
What township?
Novesta.
Lavesta. What's your last name?
Rhinus?
Rhinus. Thank you. Penny.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to address the board? Yes.
Thank you. Mike Miller, Director of Village and Grounds and Recycling. I would just like to say one thing, or a couple things. One concerning the electric bill, I guess. Was it electric and consumers or just electric? I got double.
DT and consumers both got sent out.
That's probably my fault because I called Debbie in a panic that when I started opening up the mail, I had shut off notice after shut off notice after shut off notice. And she took it upon herself to call Edison and consumers and get it worked out. And she told me that she was going to overnight the payment because if that, I don't know if that, it probably wouldn't have happened now that the mail actually showed up, but not knowing that the electricity to the county was due to be shut off on Monday of this week. Now, those bills were submitted to Renee. So that's not Debbie's fault that they weren't paid or the mail got lost or whatever. So you know, apparently it's just those two entities that got double paid. Hopefully everything will come out in the end. I know Edison and consumers will credit the account. But that's partially my fault because I was quite concerned that the electricity was going to be shut off as IT was concerned about their issue. So that's why those were overnighted. I don't have an answer to the process. That's not my department. But I just wanted you to know that's why that transpired. I am glad that there was a lot of discussion on cooperation. And I think a lot of this could have been headed off if there was more talking between departments. But be that as it may, I'd like to say that to every department in this county. I've experienced many things that have happened in this county over the last several years that if somebody would just picked up the phone and called the right person, things could have been fixed a lot quicker than getting all blown out of proportion. So I think, you know, we are all working for the same people, which are the citizens of this county. We all are hopefully trying to move in the same direction. And I think that more communication between department heads and just departments in general would be beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else like to address the board? Either the boardroom or virtual? Yes, Derek.
Dara Hood, Drain Commissioner. So I feel the need to speak because I feel like this whole thing started from me questioning about a contractor's check. So with everything that was being said today, by everyone in this room, I really hope that the board takes a look at the whole picture. As a department head, everything that I heard today, I strongly feel there's a concern of definitely communication, knowledge, and understanding amongst the departments, amongst the controller's office, everybody. I really do think that some things need to be looked at, needs to be addressed. Maybe there's a point where, you know, department heads meet or whatnot. But I do really think that there is a strong disconnect coming from the front offices to the departments, because obviously there's being fingers pointed here, and it was just a point of, I don't know if it was the knowledge or the understanding or the training. But as a department, when we look to the controller's office, with the amount of change that has happened in that office over the years, and without a controller in place, I do feel as if their leadership, that leadership role needs to be addressed, needs to be filled. That's all I can say.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else like to address the board this afternoon? Cody?
Good afternoon, everyone. Cody Horton, GIS Director. I think it's clear that we need to have, a set of leadership put into place here. Shelley is the interim administrator. We've been searching for, if it's a separate controller, separate administrator, combined. I think we need to move that process along. I think there's this gray area. We used to have Plant Moran. No, that's gone. It's been referenced. Who do these issues go to? That's the communication issue right there. I think we have to go forward with the search for leadership here.
Thank you, Cody. Anyone else like to address the boards this afternoon? Anyone? Yes, anyone virtual? Anyone else? Let the minutes show that we had offered extended public comment, and we had several who provided comments on today's discussion.
If I can just ask one, I'm sorry, I know
Yes.
public comment is
Go
done,
ahead.
but if I may ask one question.
Yes.
I apologize for my tardiness. When we were talking about the MERS and the bonding, Erica stated that she was not part of that, and I do believe she was our HR director at that time. And it just took me a little bit of digging to find that.
I was here, but I was not involved in the bonding, so you're correct.
Okay.
I was employed at the county at the time.
Okay, it led me to believe that you weren't employed here, so,
Oh, I apologize. So.
Okay.
yes, I wasn't employed here. However, I was not involved in bonding, other than when the divisions were determined, I helped set them up in the payroll software at the time. That was the extent of it.
okay, thank you for that clarification. Thank you. I do
Thank you
appreciate
for-
that moment.
Very funny. Last call. One more time. Post thoughts? Post comments? All right. With that, I want to thank everybody for enduring this morning. It's been a 3-hour session here, at least for Mark and I. And we haven't had a finance committee meeting in a while. And it was refreshing, not that the subjects at hand were refreshing, but the fact that a lot of discussion took place. I really appreciate the endurance that you've had, and all those are virtual and still remaining as well. So on behalf of the board, we thank you once again, and with that, we'll stand adjourned.